Hi there, friends. Thanks for tuning in to Black Magic. Get ready for an incredible journey as we present what if dragon riders from Romania sensed Harry's abuse at age 4 and entire dragon army invaded Britain. If you find our stories entertaining, a simple like and subscribe would mean everything to us. Your support motivates us to create more. Here we go. Chapter 1, The Sensing Freak. What did you do? 4-year-old Harry Potter pressed his back against the classroom wall as his teacher's hair turned bright blue before everyone's eyes. The other children pointed and laughed while Miss Pritchard frantically patted her head, her face reddening to match the fury in her eyes. I didn't do anything," Harry stammered, his oversized hand-me-down uniform hanging off his small frame. "It just happened." But no one believed him. They never did when strange things happened around him. 20 minutes later, Harry sat alone outside the headmaster's office, legs dangling from a chair too tall for him, stomach growling from missing lunch. His cousin Dudley had already been picked up by Aunt Petunia, who'd shot Harry a look promising punishment later. The clock ticked loudly as Harry waited for Uncle Vernon to arrive. The sound of heavy footsteps made Harry's heart race. Uncle Vernon's face appeared, purple with rage, mustache twitching as he spoke in hushed tones with the headmaster. Harry tried to make himself smaller, wishing he could disappear. He didn't understand why these things kept happening around him. He didn't mean to turn his teacher's hair blue, make toys move, or appear on the school roof that one time. "Boy!" Vernon bellowed, grabbing Harry's thin arm and yanking him from the chair. "In the car. Now." Harry knew better than to say anything. The drive home passed in terrifying silence, broken only by Vernon's occasional mutterings about freakishness and teaching lessons. When they reached number 4 Privet Drive, Vernon dragged Harry straight to the cupboard under the stairs. "No dinner for a week. And don't make a sound," he hissed, shoving Harry inside the small space that served as his bedroom. The door slammed shut, lock clicking into place. In the darkness, Harry curled up on his thin mattress, stomach aching from hunger. A spider crawled across the ceiling, and Harry watched it, finding strange comfort in the one creature that shared his space without judgment. "I didn't mean to," he whispered to no one, a single tear rolling down his cheek. 5,000 kilometers away, Dragomir Volchanov jolted upright in his saddle. His dragon, a massive Ukrainian iron belly named Tempest, roared suddenly and veered off their patrol route. "What is it, old friend?" Dragomir asked, leaning forward to stroke the dragon's metallic gray scales. 20 years of riding had taught him that dragons rarely acted without reason. A flash of pain pierced Dragomir's mind, not his own, but something transmitted through his bond with Tempest. A child's pain. Confusion. Fear. Dragons had always been sensitive to magical children in distress. The Romanian dragon sanctuary had built its reputation on this mysterious connection, intervening countless times when young witches and wizards faced danger. But this sensation came from far away, much farther than their usual range. "You feel it too?" Dragomir asked, his weathered face creasing with concern. Tempest rumbled in affirmation. As commander of the Romanian Dragon Rider Corps, Dragomir couldn't ignore this. He tapped twice on his enchanted communication band. "All riders report. Is anyone else sensing a disturbance?" Within seconds, his band heated up with responses. "Affirmative, Commander. My longhorn won't stop pacing." That was Elena, patrolling the northern border. "Same here. Fawn keeps looking west." Marcus, one of his newest recruits. "Sparks is agitated. Keeps sending me images of a small boy." Liliana, his best tracker. One by one, all 12 riders on patrol reported similar experiences. Dragomir frowned. For so many dragons to simultaneously sense the same child meant powerful magic and extreme distress. This was unprecedented. "Return to base," he ordered. "Emergency council meeting in 1 hour." Tempest needed no urging, already banking sharply toward the hidden valley that housed the Romanian dragon sanctuary. The council chamber buzzed with activity as Dragomir entered. Carved directly into the mountainside, the circular room featured a massive round table hewn from ancient oak. Maps covered the walls, and a magical fire burned in the center pit, casting dancing shadows across concerned faces. Riders, handlers, and sanctuary officials filled every seat. Elena Dalka, his second-in-command, stood as he approached. "Every dragon in the sanctuary is restless," she reported, tucking a strand of silver-streaked black hair behind her ear. "Even the hatchlings." Dragomir nodded grimly. "Have we located the source?" "Corneliu's been working on it." Elena gestured to where the sanctuary's master tracker hunched over a large map, magical instruments scattered around him. Dragomir approached, the room quieting as he moved. Corneliu, a man with more wrinkles than a Chinese fireball's hide, looked up through thick spectacles. "Somewhere in Britain," he said without preamble. "Surrey, most likely. The signal's strong but unstable." "A magical child in Britain shouldn't be our concern," stated Gavril Ionescu, the political liaison to the Romanian ministry. "They have their own systems for protecting magical children." Liliana Drachenmere, their youngest full rider at 23, stepped forward. Her short copper hair matched the scales of her Romanian longhorn, Sparks. "My dragon disagrees," she said fiercely. "She's showing me images of a cupboard, darkness, hunger. This child is being abused, not protected." "Britain has different laws regarding magical children," Gavril countered. "We can't just, laws," interrupted Marcus, slamming his palm on the table. "Dragons don't care about laws. If they're sensing abuse this strongly, something is very wrong." Dragomir raised his hand for silence. "Corneliu, can you get me more specific information? An identity, perhaps?" The old tracker nodded slowly. "With enough dragons focusing, maybe. It's unusual for them to sense someone so far away. This child must have exceptional magic. Or be in exceptional danger," Liliana added darkly. "Gather the senior dragons," Dragomir ordered. "We need more information before deciding our next move." In the great hatching cavern, 7 fully grown dragons formed a circle, their riders seated cross-legged before them. Tempest took the center position, his massive form dwarfing even the other adult dragons. Cornelius shuffled between them, burning herbs that enhanced draconic senses. The ancient magic of dragon bonding was poorly understood outside Romania, most considered it myth rather than methodology. "Focus on the child," Corneliu instructed the riders. "Let your dragons guide you." Dragomir closed his eyes, emptying his mind of everything except his connection to Tempest. Their bond, forged 20 years ago when both were much younger, ran deeper than magic. It was something primal, something older than wizardry itself. Images flooded his consciousness, a skinny boy with untidy black hair and startling green eyes. Broken glasses held together with tape. A lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. A cupboard under stairs. A family that wasn't family. Hunger. Fear. Loneliness. And a name, pulsing like a heartbeat through the dragon's collective awareness, Harry Potter. Dragomir's eyes snapped open. "It can't be." Elena stared at him, her face pale. "You saw it too?" Across the circle, riders exchanged shocked glances. "Harry Potter," Liliana whispered. "The boy who lived." Even in Romania, they knew that name. The infant who had somehow defeated the darkest wizard in generations. The child hailed as a hero throughout the wizarding world. Dragomir stood abruptly. "Council chamber. Now." "This changes everything," Gavril said, pacing the chamber floor. "Harry Potter isn't just any magical child. He's a British national icon. He's a 4-year-old boy being starved and locked in a cupboard," Liliana countered, her eyes flashing dangerously. "If what the dragon sensed is accurate," Gavril hedged. "When have our dragons ever been wrong about a child in danger?" Elena demanded. Dragomir studied the magical fire, thoughts racing. Romania and Britain had maintained a cautious diplomatic relationship since the fall of Voldemort. The Romanian dragon sanctuary operated with significant autonomy, a necessity given dragons' indifference to human borders, but interfering with Harry Potter would cause an international incident. We need to verify, he decided. Send a reconnaissance team. 2 riders, no more. Confirm the boys' situation before we take action. And if it's as bad as the dragons suggest, asked Marcus. Dragomir's weathered face hardened. Then we do what dragon riders have always done. We protect the child, regardless of borders or politics. The British ministry will never allow it, Gavril warned. We won't be asking permission, Dragomir replied. Liliana, you'll lead the reconnaissance. Take Marcus. Your dragons are among our fastest and can handle the journey. Be invisible, be thorough, and report back immediately. Liliana nodded, already calculating flight times and invisibility strategies. If we confirm abuse, Dragomir continued, we prepare a full extraction. Every available rider will stand ready. Gavril looked aghast. A full rider mobilization? Against Britain? That's practically a declaration of war. Then perhaps Britain should have better protected their hero, Dragomir replied coldly. Harry woke to the sound of his aunt rapping on the cupboard door. Up. Get up. You need to start breakfast. 3 days had passed since the blue hair incident. Uncle Vernon had relented slightly on the no-food punishment, allowing Harry a piece of toast and half a glass of water each day, enough to keep him functioning for chores but little more. Harry's small hands shook as he stood on a chair to reach the stove, carefully turning bacon while his cousin Dudley kicked the chair legs, hoping to make him fall. Aunt Petunia pretended not to notice as she fussed over Dudley's school clothes. More bacon, Diddykins. You need your strength for school. Dudley grunted agreement, his mouth already full. Harry's stomach growled audibly. Something to say, boy. Uncle Vernon lowered his newspaper, glaring. No, Uncle Vernon, Harry whispered, turning back to the stove. Later that morning, Miss Wilson, the teaching assistant supervising the playground, found Harry sitting alone behind the equipment shed. Why aren't you playing with the others, Harry? She asked kindly. Harry shrugged, not meeting her eyes. Miss Wilson was new and hadn't yet learned what the other teachers seemed to know, that Harry was trouble, a problem child from a problem family. Are you feeling all right? You look a bit peaky. She frowned, noticing his pallor. I'm fine, Harry said automatically. Did you eat your lunch? Harry hesitated. He didn't have a lunch. Aunt Petunia hadn't packed him one, claiming it was still part of his punishment. Not hungry, he lied. Miss Wilson's frown deepened. She'd been watching Harry for several days now, noting his too large clothes, his isolation, and the way Dudley Dursley and his friends chased him during breaks. Harry, she said gently, if something's wrong at home, you can tell me. That's what teachers are for. For a moment, Harry almost believed her. The words bubbled up inside him, about the cupboard, the hunger, the strange punishments for things he couldn't control. But then he remembered what happened last time a teacher asked too many questions. She disappeared, and Uncle Vernon had explained that nosy people who spread lies about good families like the Dursleys got what they deserved. Everything's fine, Harry said, forcing a smile. Really? Miss Wilson didn't look convinced, but the bell rang, signaling the end of break. Well, if you ever want to talk. She offered, but Harry was already walking away, shoulders hunched against the world. High above Surrey, invisible to Muggle eyes, Liliana and Marcus guided their dragons in widening circles. Sparks, Liliana's copper longhorn, tracked the magical signature they'd sensed from Romania, while Marcus's Welsh green named Jade maintained their concealment charms. There, Liliana murmured, pointing down at an aggressively ordinary neighborhood. Privet Drive. They landed in a small wooded area nearby, casting additional disillusionment charms on themselves. Dragons could remain largely undetected when stationary, their magic had properties that confused Muggle perception even without spells, but the riders took no chances, instructing their mounts to stay hidden until called. School first, Liliana decided, consulting a small tracking charm. The magical signature is moving there. St. Gregory's primary school looked like any other Muggle school, brick buildings, asphalt playground, colorful educational posters in windows. Disillusioned, the riders slipped through the grounds unnoticed, following the pull of their tracking charm until they found a small classroom of 4-year-olds practicing letters. Harry Potter was immediately recognizable from their dragon's visions. Small for his age, drowning in clothes several sizes too large, the boy sat slightly apart from his classmates. The famous scar was partially hidden under unruly black hair, but his vivid green eyes were unmistakable. Merlin's beard, Marcus whispered as they watched through a window. He looks half-starved. Liliana's jaw clenched as she noticed Harry's hands trembling slightly when he picked up his pencil. Years of working with abused magical children had taught her the signs. "We need to see his home," she said tersely. They followed Harry after school, watching as a horse-faced woman collected both him and a bullish blonde boy who immediately began shoving Harry when adults weren't looking. Number 4 Privet Drive was painfully ordinary, identical to its neighbors except for the meticulously maintained garden that they watched Harry being forced to weed despite his obvious exhaustion. "Stay hidden," Liliana instructed Marcus. "I'm going inside." Using disillusionment charms refined by years of dragon tracking, Liliana slipped through the back door when Vernon Dursley came home. She moved silently through the house, cataloging everything with growing rage. Family photos showing only 3 people, never Harry. A bedroom upstairs for the Dursley boy filled with broken toys. A guest bedroom immaculately maintained. The master bedroom with expensive furnishings. And then she found the cupboard under the stairs. Locked from the outside. A silent Alhambra revealed the cramped space that served as Harry's room, a thin mattress, a shelf with a few broken toy soldiers, a drawing of what looked like a flying motorcycle. Spider webs decorated the corners, and the whole space smelled of cleaning products stored alongside the small child. Liliana had seen enough. She slipped back outside to where Marcus waited. "Well?" he asked, noting her thunderous expression. "Prepare for immediate return to Romania," she replied, voice shaking with suppressed fury. The dragons were right. Harry Potter lives in a cupboard. He's being starved, worked like a house elf, and treated worse than a prisoner in Nurmengard. Marcus swore softly. The British ministry can't know about this. Dumbledore can't know. Someone knows, Liliana said grimly. And they've allowed it to happen. Albus Dumbledore was enjoying a quiet evening in his office when one of the silver instruments on his desk began emitting purple smoke instead of its usual silver. He frowned, adjusting his half-moon spectacles to examine it more closely. The monitoring charm on Harry Potter's home indicated unfamiliar magic nearby, not dangerous, exactly, but certainly unexpected. He considered sending someone to check but decided against it. Arabella Figg had reported nothing unusual in her latest update, and he had a meeting with the International Confederation in an hour. The Blood Wards were holding strong, which meant Harry was safe. That was what mattered most. Everything else was secondary. The instrument's smoke faded back to silver, and Dumbledore returned to his paperwork, the momentary concern already forgotten. The Romanian dragon sanctuary erupted into activity upon Liliana and Marcus's return. Riders, handlers, and support staff gathered in the council chamber as they delivered their report, complete with extracted memories viewed in a pensieve. Unacceptable, Elena spat after witnessing Harry's living conditions. How could Britain allow this? They probably don't know, Marcus suggested. Or don't want to know. Either way, they've failed their responsibility, Dragomir said firmly. The child needs immediate extraction. Gavril, looking shaken by the memories but still mindful of his political position, raised a hand. Perhaps we should contact the British ministry first. Give them a chance to correct this situation. And risk them hiding the evidence. Moving the boy. Liliana challenged. The dragon sensed his distress across the continent, Gavril. This isn't a diplomatic matter, it's a dragon matter. Dragon matters had been handled by the Romanian sanctuary for centuries. When dragons sensed a child in danger, rider intervention was swift and uncompromising, a tradition that predated most modern magical governments. Dragomir stood, commanding attention with his presence alone. 2 decades of leadership had taught him when to debate and when to act. Prepare all available riders for extraction, he ordered. Full tactical approach. We move at dawn. All riders? Elena asked, surprised. For one child. Not just any child, Dragomir reminded her. Harry Potter. The British will resist. We must show overwhelming force to prevent bloodshed. And after? Gavril asked quietly. Once we have the boy, what then? Britain will demand his return. Let them, Dragomir said coldly. We'll invoke ancient right of draconic protection. Even the ICW respects that tradition. The right hadn't been used in nearly 50 years, not since Romanian dragons sensed a young witch being tortured in Grindelwald's final days. But it remained binding magical law, recognized even by governments that otherwise dismissed Romania's dragon bonding as primitive. 30 riders, Dragomir continued. Full battle gear. Elena, you'll coordinate our defensive positions. Liliana, you'll lead the extraction team, you've seen the location. Marcus, prepare the medical team for receiving an abused child. I want healers ready the moment we return. As the group dispersed to prepare, Dragomir approached Liliana privately. The boy may resist, he warned. He doesn't know us. Liliana nodded. I've extracted abused children before. I'll be gentle but firm. This will change everything, Dragomir said, glancing at the map of Britain displayed on the wall. Not just for Harry Potter, but for relations between our countries. Some things matter more than politics, Liliana replied. Dragomir smiled grimly. That's why you're leading the extraction. Dawn broke over the Carpathian Mountains as 30 dragons and their riders assembled on the great launching plateau. Leather-armored riders checked harnesses and supplies while dragons stretched massive wings, scales gleaming in the early light. Dragomir stood before them, Tempest's enormous form a backdrop that emphasized his words. Today we fly for one child, he called, voice carrying across the assembly. A child forgotten by those sworn to protect him. A child with magic strong enough that our dragons sensed his pain across Europe. Murmurs spread through the gathered riders. We fly together, we fight together if necessary, but our mission is extraction only. No Romanian dragon rider seeks British blood today. He mounted Tempest with practiced ease, settling into the saddle that had become a second home. Form up. Defensive pattern Hydra. Extraction team at the center. Dragons launched in perfect coordination, their wing beats creating gusts that bent treetops below. They circled once above the sanctuary before pointing west, toward Britain. As they crossed into Hungarian airspace, a delegation of Hungarian dragon handlers on brooms approached cautiously. Commander Volchanov, called their leader. What is the meaning of this mobilization? We received no flight plan. Emergency extraction, Dragomir replied without slowing. Ancient right of draconic protection. Stand aside. The Hungarian handlers exchanged glances. The right was rarely invoked but universally respected among those who worked with dragons. Who authorizes this? One demanded. Dragomir pointed to the dragons themselves. They do. Question them if you wish. None of the handlers accepted that challenge. Arguing with 30 battle-ready dragons was suicide, regardless of diplomatic protocols. They escorted the formation to their border, then turned back with promises to alert the next country's authorities. As the dragon army crossed Europe, similar scenes played out over Austria, Germany, and France. Word spread rapidly through international magical channels. By the time they approached the English Channel, British Aurors were scrambling to respond to the unprecedented incursion. In the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, alarms blared as monitoring charms detected the approaching dragon force. Amelia Bones, head of the DMLE, stared in disbelief at the magical map showing 30 dragons in tight formation crossing the channel. "Get me the minister," she ordered. "And someone find Dumbledore." Junior Aurors scrambled while senior officers prepared emergency response teams. None of their training had covered responding to a dragon army. "What in Merlin's name are the Romanians doing?" demanded Cornelius Fudge minutes later, his lime green bowler hat askew as he burst into the command center. "This is an act of war." "We don't know their intentions, Minister," Amelia replied carefully. "They've made no hostile actions against magical populations in any country they've crossed. 30 dragons entering British airspace without permission is hostile by definition." Fudge spluttered. "I want them intercepted immediately." "With what?" Amelia asked bluntly. "Britain maintains exactly 3 dragon handlers, all at the reserve in Wales. We have no equivalent to their rider corps. Then Aurors on brooms. The dragon division from magical creatures. Something." Albus Dumbledore arrived in time to hear this exchange, his normally twinkling eyes serious. "Intercepting dragons in formation would be unwise, Cornelius," he advised. "Perhaps we should attempt communication first." "They've ignored communication attempts from 4 countries." Fudge retorted, waving a stack of emergency dispatches. "They're invoking some outdated, draconic protection nonsense." Dumbledore stilled. "The ancient right? That's only used when..." His voice trailed off as one of the silver instruments he carried began emitting purple smoke again. The same one that had activated the previous day. The one monitoring Harry Potter. "We need to know their destination," he said urgently. The answer came moments later as reports flooded in from the improper use of magic office. "Dragons sighted over London. Muggle-worthy excuse committee overwhelmed. Statute of secrecy breaches in Surrey." "Surrey?" Dumbledore repeated, face paling. "Precisely where?" A young Auror looked up from her communication scroll. "Little whinging, sir. They seem to be targeting a single street." "Privet Drive," Dumbledore whispered. Harry sat on his bed in the cupboard, knees pulled to his chest. He'd been locked in since returning from school, punishment for looking at Dudley funny during dinner. Outside, he could hear the Dursleys watching television, Dudley's laughter occasionally drowning out the program itself. Harry's stomach growled painfully. He'd had nothing but water since yesterday's single slice of bread. A strange sound caught his attention, a sort of whooshing, followed by heavy thuds that seemed to shake the entire house. The television abruptly went silent. "What the devil?" Uncle Vernon's voice bellowed. Harry pressed his ear against the cupboard door, listening as his uncle stormed toward the front entrance. He heard the door open, followed by Vernon's shocked gasp. "What is the meaning of this?" Vernon shouted, his voice strangely higher than usual. "Who are you people?" A woman's voice answered, accented but clear. "We've come for the boy." "What boy?" "There's no boy here. Just my family." Harry's heart raced. Someone was looking for him. But who? And why? "Do not lie," the woman's voice hardened. "Harry Potter lives here, locked in a cupboard under your stairs. We have come to take him to safety." "How dare you? This is breaking and entering. I'll call the police." A deeper voice spoke next, male and commanding. "Your Muggle authorities cannot help you now, Mr. Dursley. Step aside. I will not have freaks in my house." Vernon roared. A brief scuffle followed, then the sound of someone hitting the wall hard enough to rattle the cupboard door. Harry scrambled back from the door as he heard the lock click and slide open. Light flooded the small space, momentarily blinding him. When his vision cleared, he saw a young woman with copper-colored hair crouching before him, her expression gentle but determined. "Hello, Harry," she said softly. "My name is Liliana. I've come to take you away from here." Harry stared at her, speechless. He noticed she wore strange leather clothing with symbols he didn't recognize. "How do you know my name?" he finally managed. "Our dragon sensed you were in trouble," she explained, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. "They felt your pain all the way in Romania." "Dragons?" Harry whispered, eyes widening. "Dragons aren't real." Liliana smiled. "They're very real, Harry. And they're waiting outside to meet you. This is kidnapping." Aunt Petunia shrieked from somewhere behind Liliana. "He's our nephew. Our responsibility." A tall man with a weathered face appeared in the doorway behind Liliana, his expression hardening as he took in Harry's cupboard. "You call this responsibility?" he demanded, voice vibrating with barely controlled rage. "A child locked in a cupboard? Starved? Wearing rags?" Harry shrank back, afraid of the man's anger, but Liliana reached out slowly. "It's okay, Harry. Commander Dragomir isn't angry at you. He's angry at how you've been treated." "I don't understand," Harry said, voice small. "Why do you care? No one's ever cared before." Something flashed in Liliana's eyes, sadness, perhaps, or determination. "Because dragons care, Harry. And in Romania, what dragons care about, we care about." She extended her hand. "Will you come with us? I promise you'll never have to live in a cupboard again." Harry hesitated. He'd been taught never to go with strangers. But something about Liliana felt right, her eyes held no deception, only kindness. Slowly, he placed his small hand in hers. As Liliana helped Harry out of the cupboard, he got his first full view of the situation. Uncle Vernon sat slumped against the wall, apparently stunned but not injured. Aunt Petunia stood frozen in the living room doorway, her face ashen. Dudley was nowhere to be seen. More leather-clad strangers filled the hallway, all watching Harry with expressions ranging from sympathy to poorly concealed anger. "Is there anything you want to take with you, Harry?" Liliana asked gently. Harry thought of his few broken toys, the ragged blanket, the drawing he'd made of a flying motorcycle. "Just this," he said, pulling the drawing from under his mattress. Dragomir's expression softened slightly as he looked at the crude drawing. "You remember that?" "Remember what?" Harry asked, confused. "Never mind," Dragomir said. "We'll talk about it later. For now, we need to leave before." Multiple loud cracks interrupted him as several people in robes appeared in the already crowded hallway, wands drawn. "Romanian Dragon Corps," a stern-faced witch announced, "you are in violation of British magical sovereignty. Release the boy immediately." "Order bones," Dragomir acknowledged without lowering his guard. "We've invoked the ancient right of draconic protection. The boy comes with us." Another crack heralded the arrival of an elderly man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles. Harry thought he looked like a wizard from storybooks. "Commander Volchanov," the old man said gravely. "This is a serious overreach of your authority. Harry Potter must remain with his family for his own protection." "Protection?" Liliana spat, pulling Harry slightly behind her. "Is that what you call this, Dumbledore? A malnourished child locked in a cupboard?" The old man, Dumbledore, looked genuinely shocked as his gaze fell on the cupboard door, still standing open to reveal Harry's pitiful living space. "I was not aware of these specific arrangements," he admitted. "But there are magical protections in place that require Harry to live with his blood relatives. Protections that keep him safe from those who would harm him." "Safe?" Dragomir's voice was dangerous. "Your definition of safety differs greatly from ours, Chief Warlock. Our dragon sensed his distress across Europe. The boy stays with us until a formal hearing before the ICW. More cracks announced additional arrivals, a flustered-looking man in a lime-green bowler hat, accompanied by more robed figures. "This is outrageous," the man spluttered. "An invasion of British territory. Dragons visible to Muggles across southern England. The statute of secrecy in tatters." "Minister Fudge," Dragomir acknowledged coldly. "Your concerns about secrecy come too late. Your country failed its most fundamental duty, protecting a magical child from abuse." Harry, overwhelmed by the crowd and the incomprehensible conversation, pressed closer to Liliana. She squeezed his hand reassuringly. "This isn't about politics," she told the assembled British officials. "This is about a child's well-being. Look at him. Look at where he's been living. Are you proud of this, Minister? Is this how Britain treats its heroes?" Fudge faltered as he noticed Harry's condition for the first time, the oversized clothes, the too thin frame, the lightning scar visible through his untidy hair. "I wasn't, that is to say. Dumbledore assured us. I placed Harry with his relatives for his protection," Dumbledore said firmly. "While I regret their treatment of him, there are greater dangers, greater than a child who believes he deserves to be locked away and starved." Liliana challenged. "There is no greater danger to a magical child's development." "The ICW will hear of this," Fudge blustered, regaining some composure. "Romanian dragons have no jurisdiction here." "Actually, Minister," came a new voice as an elderly which pushed through the crowd, "the ancient right of draconic protection supersedes national jurisdiction when invoked properly." "Madam Marchbanks," Dumbledore acknowledged, looking troubled. "I came as soon as I heard," the elderly witch said, her eyes falling on Harry with evident concern. "As Britain's representative to the ICW Committee on Ancient Magical Protocols, I must verify the invocation." She approached Harry slowly, her wand moving in intricate patterns without touching him. Golden light surrounded the boy briefly, then turned a deep, pulsing red. "The rite has been correctly invoked," she announced formally. "The dragons have sensed genuine danger to the child's magical development. Their intervention is sanctioned by protocols dating back to the founding of the ICW itself." "This is absurd," Fudge protested. "Some outdated ritual can't supersede the authority of the British Ministry of Magic." "It can and it does, Cornelius," Madam Marchbanks replied firmly. "Unless you wish to formally withdraw Britain from the International Confederation of Wizards." A tense silence followed this question. Even Harry, understanding little of what was happening, could feel the significance of the moment. "Perhaps," Dumbledore said carefully, "we might reach a compromise. Harry could be placed with a British wizarding family while we review his situation." "No compromise," Dragomir stated flatly. "The dragons have chosen to protect him. He comes to Romania until a formal hearing determines his future." "And when will that be?" Amelia Bones asked pragmatically. "The standard cooling period is 30 days, Madam Marchbanks supplied. After which the ICW Special Committee on Child Welfare will convene." 30 days. Fudge looked apoplectic. "The press will have a field day. Boy who lived kidnapped by foreign dragons. Better than British hero discovered abused and neglected," Liliana countered. "Which would you prefer to explain, Minister?" Before Fudge could respond, a thunderous roar shook the house. Through the open front door, Harry caught his first glimpse of what waited outside: enormous scaled bodies, massive wings, and fiery eyes. Dragons. Real dragons. His mouth fell open in wonder, fear momentarily forgotten. "They're getting restless," Dragomir noted. "We should go." "I must protest this action in the strongest possible terms," Dumbledore said, but his usual authority seemed diminished in the face of Madam Marchbanks' ruling. "Your protest is noted," Dragomir replied coolly. "Formal diplomatic channels remain open. But Harry Potter leaves with us today." Liliana crouched to Harry's level. "Ready to go, Harry? To meet the dragons?" Harry hesitated, looking around at the crowded hallway, his aunt and uncle, the strange robed people, the Dragon Riders. His entire life had been confined to Privet Drive and its surrounding areas, all of it controlled by the Dursleys. "Will I have to come back?" he asked quietly. "Not if we have anything to say about it," Liliana promised. "The dragons have chosen to protect you, Harry. And dragons don't give up easily." That settled it. Harry nodded, still clutching his drawing in one hand and Liliana's fingers in the other. As they stepped outside, Harry gasped at the sight that greeted him. Dragons of various sizes and colors perched on rooftops, in gardens, and on the street itself. Neighbors stood frozen in their doorways, some holding cameras, others simply staring open-mouthed. A beautiful copper-colored dragon with impressive horns lowered its head as Liliana approached with Harry. "This is Sparks," she introduced. "She was the first to sense your distress." Harry stared, mesmerized, as the dragon's massive eye, intelligent and somehow kind, focused on him. "She can understand me." "Better than most humans," Liliana confirmed with a smile. "Would you like to fly with us?" Before Harry could answer, shouts erupted behind them as more robed figures appeared, wands raised. "Extraction team, move out," Dragomir ordered sharply. In one fluid motion, Liliana scooped Harry up and leapt onto Sparks' lowered foreleg, climbing swiftly to the saddle secured between the dragon's shoulder blades. She settled Harry in front of her, securing him with padded harness straps that adjusted automatically to his small size. "Hold on tight," she instructed as Sparks tensed beneath them. The copper dragon launched skyward with a powerful thrust of her wings, the ground falling away with dizzying speed. Harry's stomach lurched, but instead of fear, he felt an unexpected joy bubbling up inside him. He was flying. On a dragon. Around them, the other riders mounted their dragons and took to the air in perfect formation. Spells flashed from below as British Aurors attempted non-lethal restraining charms, but they bounced harmlessly off the dragon's naturally magic-resistant scales. "Dragon Riders." Dragomir's voice carried across the formation. "Defensive pattern. Return to sanctuary." As the dragons wheeled eastward, Harry looked back once at Privet Drive, growing smaller by the second. He saw his aunt and uncle standing in the doorway, his cousin's face pressed against an upstairs window, the wizards on the lawn looking up in evident frustration. For the first time in his short life, Harry Potter felt something unfamiliar unfurling in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it for what it was. Hope. Chapter 2, The Rescue. Flying on a dragon beat everything. Harry clung to the front of the saddle, wind whipping through his hair as Sparks soared higher than any airplane he'd ever seen. The dragon's copper scales gleamed in the sunlight, warm beneath his fingers. Liliana sat behind him, one arm securely around his waist while her other hand held leather straps connected to Sparks' harness. "You okay?" she shouted over the wind. Harry couldn't stop grinning. "This is brilliant." 30 dragons flew in tight formation, creating a living shield around Harry. Massive wings beat the air in synchronized rhythm, carrying them eastward at incredible speed. Below, the patchwork of English countryside unfolded like a living map. "Commander." Marcus called from his green dragon, flying alongside. "British pursuit on our tail." "Broom riders." Dragomir, atop the enormous tempest, signaled with his hand. "Defensive line. Continue forward progress." The formation shifted smoothly. The largest dragons dropped back to form a rear guard while the fastest, including Liliana's Sparks, accelerated forward with Harry. "Don't worry," Liliana assured Harry, noticing his nervous glance backward. "They won't catch us. Nothing flies faster than dragons in open air." "Where are we going?" Harry asked, still struggling to believe this wasn't some fantastic dream he'd wake from to find himself back in the cupboard. "First to a safe location to rest and explain everything," she replied. "Then to Romania, our home." Romania? Harry had heard the name but knew nothing about it. His geography lessons at school hadn't gone much beyond England. "It's where dragons are respected, not hidden away," Liliana explained. And where people who bond with dragons live in harmony with them. Behind them, spells flashed between the pursuing wizards and the rear-guard dragons. None seemed to connect, the dragons were too fast, too agile despite their size. "They're really trying to get me back," Harry said quietly, his momentary joy dimming. Liliana's arm tightened protectively around him. "Not because they care about you, Harry. Because you're important to them for reasons they've never explained to you. That stops now." The formation banked sharply northward, heading toward the Scottish Highlands. The pursuing broom riders fell further behind, unable to match the dragon's speed and endurance. "We're losing them," Marcus reported with satisfaction. Dragomir nodded. "Good. But they'll track us by other means soon enough. We need to reach the sanctuary." Harry watched in fascination as dragons communicated with subtle movements, a wing tilt here, a tail flick there. The riders seemed to understand this silent language, responding with gentle touches to scales or quiet words. "Can you talk to them?" Harry asked Liliana. "The dragons, I mean." "Not with words exactly," she explained. "More with feelings, images. The bond between rider and dragon goes deeper than language. Sparks knows what I'm thinking before I do sometimes." As if hearing her name, the copper dragon rumbled, the vibration passing through her body to Harry. Somehow, he knew she was expressing agreement. "She likes you," Liliana said, sounding slightly surprised. "She says your magic feels familiar somehow." "My magic?" Harry repeated, confused. "But I don't have." "Of course you do," Liliana interrupted gently. "Why do you think strange things happen around you when you're scared or angry? That's your magic responding to your emotions." Harry's eyes widened. The blue hair. The school roof. The shrinking sweater. All those freaky incidents that got him punished. That was magic. Real magic. "Very real," Liliana confirmed. "And very strong, from what our dragons sensed." The formation began descending as they approached a remote valley deep in the Scottish Highlands. Mist clung to the mountainsides, concealing their approach from any watching eyes. "Sanctuary ahead," Dragomir announced. "Defensive perimeter on landing." One by one, the dragons touched down in a clearing beside a small loch. The landing should have been jarring, but Sparks settled to earth with surprising gentleness, crouching low to allow Liliana and Harry to dismount. Harry's legs wobbled as he stood on solid ground again. Hours of flying had left him stiff and cold despite the dragon's natural warmth. Liliana steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. "First time flying is always wobbly," she said with a smile. "You'll get used to it." "I get to do that again?" Harry asked eagerly. "Many times," she promised. "But first, let's get you warm and fed." At the mention of food, Harry's stomach growled loudly. The dragon riders had set up a perimeter, some remaining with their mounts while others began establishing a temporary camp with impressive efficiency. Tents appeared from seemingly nowhere, unfolding to sizes that shouldn't have been possible. A fire pit formed in the center of the clearing, flames springing to life without matches or lighters. Dragomir approached, his weathered face softening slightly as he looked down at Harry. "Welcome to your first dragon sanctuary, young one," he said. "Not as impressive as our permanent home, but secure for now." Harry looked around in wonder. "This is brilliant," he said again, lacking better words. "Come," Dragomir gestured toward the largest tent. "We have much to discuss." Inside, the tent defied its exterior dimensions, opening into a comfortable space with a central table, several chairs, and what looked like a map floating in midair. Harry gaped at the impossibility of it. "Magic," Liliana explained simply, guiding him to a chair. "You'll see much more where we're going." A young rider entered carrying a tray of food, bread, cheese, fruit, and a steaming bowl of soup. Harry hesitated, looking to Liliana for permission. "It's all for you," she encouraged. "Eat as much as you want." Harry needed no further invitation. He fell upon the food with the hunger of someone who'd been half-starved for days. The soup, rich with vegetables and meat he couldn't identify, was the most delicious thing he'd ever tasted. Dragomir and Liliana exchanged glances over Harry's head but said nothing until he'd slowed down, finally feeling full for the first time in memory. "Better?" Dragomir asked. Harry nodded, suddenly embarrassed by his behavior. "Sorry for eating like that." "Never apologize for hunger that others caused," Dragomir said firmly. "In Romania, no child goes without food. Especially not children in our care." Harry considered this strange concept. Adults who made sure children ate enough. It contradicted everything he'd experienced with the Dursleys. "Why did you come for me?" he asked finally. "Nobody ever cared before." Liliana sat beside him. "Dragons can sense magical children in distress. Usually only nearby, but sometimes, rarely, they sense someone special from very far away. 3 days ago, every dragon in our sanctuary became agitated, sending their riders images of you." "Me? But I'm not special." "The dragons disagree," Dragomir said, folding his arms. "And dragons are rarely wrong about such things. But what makes me special?" Harry pressed. The adults exchanged another look. "Harry," Liliana began carefully, "do you know how your parents died?" Harry frowned. "In a car crash. That's how I got this." He pointed to the lightning scar on his forehead. "A car crash?" Dragomir's face darkened. "They told you Lily and James Potter died in a car crash. You knew my parents?" Harry whispered, suddenly breathless. "Not personally," Dragomir admitted. "But every wizard and witch knows their names." "And yours?" "Wizard? Witch?" "Harry," Liliana said gently, "your parents were a wizard and witch, magical people, like you. They didn't die in a car crash. They were murdered by a dark wizard named Voldemort when you were just a baby." Harry stared at her, trying to process this revelation. "Murdered by, but why?" "Voldemort was gathering power, killing those who opposed him," Dragomir explained. "Your parents fought against him. When he came for them, they died protecting you. And then something extraordinary happened. When Voldemort tried to kill you too, the spell rebounded. He vanished, apparently destroyed by his own magic. That's why you have that scar," Liliana added. "That's why people call you the boy who lived. You're the only person ever known to survive the killing curse." Harry touched his scar, seeing it in a completely new light. Not a shameful reminder of the drunken crash his aunt always sneered about, but a mark of his parents' sacrifice, parents who had fought evil, who had died protecting him. "So everyone in the wizarding world knows who I am?" he asked, struggling with the concept. "You're quite famous," Dragomir confirmed. "Which makes it all the more outrageous that you were left with those muggles, non-magical people, who treated you so poorly. But why was I left there? If I'm magical, if my parents were magical, why didn't I live with magical people?" Liliana's expression darkened. "That's what we'd all like to know. Albus Dumbledore, the old wizard with the long beard who confronted us, he's the one who placed you there. He claims there were protective spells that required you to live with blood relatives. But there are ways to protect a child without condemning them to abuse," Dragomir added grimly. "Ways that don't involve cupboards and starvation." Harry fell silent, overwhelmed by revelations that rewrote everything he'd believed about himself and his life. His parents hadn't been drunks who died carelessly, they'd been heroes who died saving him. He wasn't a freak, he was a wizard with powers the Dursleys feared. And people had known, important wizards had known, where he was all along. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "Now we rest," Dragomir said. "Tomorrow we continue to Romania, where you'll be safe while this situation is resolved. And if they try to send me back?" Liliana's eyes flashed. "They won't succeed." Dragon protection isn't easily overturned, especially when it's so clearly justified. A rider entered the tent, breathing heavily. "Commander, British forces approaching. Magical signatures detected breaching our outer wards." Dragomir stood immediately. "How many?" "At least 20 wizards, sir." "And?" The rider hesitated. "Dumbledore is with them." "Prepare for immediate departure," Dragomir ordered. "Priority protection formation." As the rider hurried out, Dragomir turned to Liliana. "Get Harry to your dragon. If we're separated, continue east. The secondary rendezvous is the North Sea Sanctuary." Liliana nodded, helping Harry to his feet. "Come on, little one. Adventure's not over yet." Outside, the camp was already disappearing, tents folding themselves while riders mounted their dragons. The peaceful clearing had transformed into a launch site humming with urgent activity. Sparks crouched low as they approached, her copper scales catching the last rays of evening sun. Harry climbed more confidently this time, settling into the front of the saddle with Liliana's help. "Remember to lean with the turns," she instructed, securing their harness. "And trust Sparks, she won't let you fall." Around the clearing's edge, shimmering distortions appeared in the air, magical barriers failing under assault. Voices called out orders as robed figures began appearing between the trees. "Halt in the name of the Ministry," someone shouted. "Riders, launch!" Dragomir commanded from atop Tempest. Dragons leapt skyward simultaneously, powerful wings driving them above the tree-line before the advancing wizards could react. Spells shot upward, most missing entirely as the dragons accelerated with impossible speed. "They're tracking us magically," Liliana called to Dragomir as the formation stabilized. "We can't shake them like regular pursuit." Dragomir nodded grimly. "Then we fly straight through, maximum speed, minimum stops. Romania in 18 hours. Can the dragons maintain that pace?" Marcus asked, guiding his green dragon alongside. "They'll manage," Dragomir replied. "Our alternative is fighting British oars, which helps no one." Harry held tight as the dragons accelerated further, the wind now painful against his face until Liliana pulled a leather hood forward from the saddle, creating a windbreak that surrounded them both. "Better?" she asked, her voice somehow clear despite the rushing air. Harry nodded, watching in fascination as Britain fell away beneath them, the North Sea opening up ahead, dark and vast in the gathering dusk. "We're really going to fly all the way to Romania?" he asked, awed by the distance. "Dragons can fly for days when needed," Liliana explained. "They'll rest briefly over water, floating while they recover strength. We've made this journey before." As they continued eastward, stars appeared above, more brilliant than Harry had ever seen them. No streetlights or house lights polluted this view, just the moon illuminating 30 dragons soaring in perfect formation above the waves. Despite the excitement and danger, exhaustion began to overtake Harry. The day's events, the emotional revelations, and the physical strain of flying combined to make his eyelids heavy. "Sleep if you need to," Liliana said, noticing his drooping head. "I've got you secure." "Won't fall," he mumbled. "Dragon riders promise," she replied softly. Harry allowed himself to relax against her, his small body cushioned by the specially designed saddle. As he drifted toward sleep, he heard Liliana humming a melody he didn't recognize, something ancient and comforting, like a lullaby from another time. His dreams, for once, contained no cupboards or yelling relatives, only open skies and the sensation of flying free. Albus Dumbledore stood in the abandoned clearing, his usual twinkling expression replaced by grave concern. Around him, Aurors searched for clues while Cornelius Fudge paced furiously, bowler hat crushed in his hands. "They've disappeared completely," Fudge complained. 30 dragons. Do you have any idea what the press will do with this? What the ICW will say? "I'm more concerned about Harry," Dumbledore replied quietly. Of course," Fudge backtracked hastily. "The boy's welfare is paramount. But surely you see the diplomatic nightmare we're facing. Romania has effectively kidnapped Britain's most famous child. The ancient rite complicates matters, Dumbledore admitted. Griselda Marchbank's confirmation makes this a legitimate intervention under ICW protocols. Hang the protocols. Fudge exploded. This is Harry Potter. The symbol of our victory against you-know-who. The people won't stand for him being raised by foreign dragon handlers. Amelia Bones approached, her practical demeanor a contrast to Fudge's agitation. They're flying east, she reported. Tracking charms confirm they're heading directly for Romania, maximum speed. We could intercept over the North Sea, but... Fudge prompted. But engaging 30 battle-trained dragons over open water would be suicide, she stated bluntly. I won't order my Aurors to certain death. So we just give up? Fudge demanded. We pursue diplomatic channels, Dumbledore interjected. The emergency session of the ICW meets in 3 days. We can present our case then. 3 days. Fudge looked apoplectic. The boy will be in Romania by then. Yes, Dumbledore agreed, but the rite only grants temporary custody. We can petition for his return. On what grounds? Amelia asked shrewdly. The evidence of neglect was compelling, Albus. Dumbledore sighed heavily. I made a mistake in not checking on Harry's living conditions more thoroughly. I believed the blood protection warranted certain sacrifices. Sacrifices? Amelia's voice turned cold. I saw that cupboard, Albus. I saw the locks. No magical child should live like that, blood protection or not. The protective magic required his residence with blood relatives, Dumbledore explained. It was the only way to shield him from Voldemort's remaining followers. Well, it didn't shield him from those muggles, did it? Amelia countered. Perhaps we could address this after we've secured Harry's return. Fudge interrupted, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. The immediate issue is the Romanian intrusion and the public relations disaster unfolding. I recommend we contact the Romanian Magical Embassy immediately, Dumbledore suggested. And prepare our case for the ICW. We need to emphasize the importance of Harry remaining in Britain, where he belongs. And where he's safe from whoever might still wish him harm, Fudge added pointedly. Is he, though? Amelia asked quietly. Safe. The three stood in uncomfortable silence, the abandoned clearing offering no answers. Harry woke to gentle shaking. Opening his eyes, he found himself still secured to Spark's saddle, Liliana's arm around him. Dawn painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, revealing a coastline ahead. We're approaching Denmark, Liliana explained. First brief rest stop. Below, a small island appeared, uninhabited except for what looked like ruins of an ancient stone structure. The dragons descended in careful sequence, touching down on a beach far from any visible settlements. Riders dismounted stiffly, stretching legs cramped from hours of flying. The dragons immediately waded into the shallow water, drinking deeply before submerging themselves to cool overheated muscles. 15 minutes, Dragomir announced. Basic needs only, then we continue. Harry's legs nearly buckled when Liliana helped him down. She caught him easily, laughing at his embarrassed expression. First long flight is always the hardest, she assured him. Here, walk with me. Get your blood flowing again. They strolled along the beach while other riders handled necessary tasks with practiced efficiency, distributing water and food, checking harnesses, and performing quick healing spells for minor discomforts. Where exactly are we going? Harry asked, accepting a water flask from a passing rider. The Romanian Dragon Sanctuary, Liliana replied. The largest dragon reserve in Europe. It's hidden in the Carpathian Mountains where muggles, non-magical people, can't find it. And I'll live there. With the dragons? For now, yes. Until the legal issues are resolved. Seeing his worried expression, she added, "But regardless of what happens legally, you will never go back to those people who mistreated you. That I promise." Harry wanted to believe her, but years of broken promises and disappointments made trust difficult. Before he could respond, Dragomir approached, checking a compass-like device that spun and glowed with magical energy. "British pursuit has fallen back," he reported. "They're regrouping, likely planning to intercept us at a choke point." "The German border?" Liliana guessed. Dragomir nodded. "We'll alter course. Northern route through Sweden and Finland, then south through Ukraine. Longer but less likely to be heavily guarded." "Will the dragons manage the extra distance?" "They'll have to." He glanced at Harry. "How's our young guest holding up?" "I'm okay," Harry answered, standing straighter. "I like flying." A rare smile flickered across Dragomir's face. "Good. Dragons can sense fear and hesitation. Your comfort with flying will make the journey easier for everyone." A high whistle signaled time to depart. Riders quickly mounted their dragons, harnesses secured with practiced speed. Harry climbed onto Sparks with growing confidence, settling into the saddle position that already felt familiar. "Next stop, Sweden," Liliana told him as they launched. "A bit colder, so I'll cast warming charms when we get higher." The dragons formed a new pattern, wider spacing, higher altitude, optimized for long-distance travel. Harry watched in fascination as they communicated through subtle movements, adjusting their formation without apparent commands from the riders. "How do they know what to do?" he asked. "Dragons have their own intelligence," Liliana explained. "They understand tactics and strategy as well as any human commander. Better, sometimes. Sparks has saved my life by disobeying orders she knew were wrong." As if acknowledging the compliment, Sparks rumbled beneath them. Harry tentatively placed his hand on her scaled neck, feeling warmth and something else, a subtle vibration that seemed to resonate with something inside him. "I feel something," he said hesitantly. "Like she's humming to me." Liliana looked surprised. "You're sensing her magic. Most people can't do that without years of training or a formal bond." "Is that good?" "It's interesting," she replied carefully. "Very interesting." The journey continued across the Baltic Sea, the dragons maintaining a punishing pace that ate up kilometers with each powerful wing beat. Below, Sweden's forests and lakes unfolded in a tapestry of green and blue. Few people would notice the dragons at this altitude, just distant specks that might be mistaken for large birds. Near noon, they descended briefly in a remote Finnish forest for another rest. This stop lasted longer, 30 minutes for the dragons to hunt and recover strength. Harry watched in awe as several dragons collaborated to bring down a moose, sharing the meal with efficient precision. "Doesn't that break some law?" he asked, remembering nature shows he'd glimpsed when the Dursleys weren't watching. "Dragon sanctuaries maintain special agreements with magical governments," Dragomir explained as he joined them. "Controlled hunting in designated areas, with population management spells to ensure no species is endangered." Harry nodded, still watching the dragons eat. "They're so smart. Smarter than most wizards give them credit for," Dragomir agreed. "In Britain, dragons are treated as dangerous beasts to be contained. In Romania, we recognize them as magical beings with their own society and intelligence." "Is that why they came for me?" "Because they're smart enough to care." Dragomir considered him thoughtfully. "Dragons have always protected magical children, it's instinctive for them. But your case was different. The distance alone makes it remarkable. Something about your magic called to them specifically." Before Harry could ask more questions, a rider approached urgently. "Commander. Magical detection wards triggered to the south. Someone's tracking us." Dragomir's expression hardened. "Time to move. Straight east from here, maximum altitude. We cross into Russian airspace within the hour." The brief rest ended abruptly as dragons and riders prepared for departure. Harry noticed increased tension, riders checking magical devices, dragons sniffing the air alertly. "Are we in danger?" he asked Liliana as they mounted Sparks. "Not danger exactly," she replied, securing their harness. "But someone's trying very hard to find us. Likely British Aurors using tracking spells targeted at your magical signature. Can they follow us?" "They can try," she said with grim determination. "But we've evaded pursuers in far worse circumstances." The dragons launched simultaneously, climbing rapidly to an altitude that made Harry's ears pop despite protective charms. The formation tightened, the dragons flying so close their wingtips nearly touched. "Obscuration formation," Liliana explained. "Their magical signatures overlap, making individual tracking nearly impossible." For hours they flew eastward, occasionally adjusting course to avoid magical detection zones that Dragomir identified with his compass-like device. The dragons pushed themselves harder, their endurance remarkable even to Harry's inexperienced eyes. By late afternoon, they crossed into Russian airspace. Unlike previous border crossings, this one brought visible tension to the riders. "Russia doesn't officially recognize the ancient rite," Liliana explained when Harry noticed her vigilance. "We have limited diplomatic standing here. Will they try to stop us?" "Unlikely. Russian wizards generally avoid confrontation with dragons. But we'll fly fast and stay high just in case." The vast Russian landscape passed beneath them, endless forests, rivers snaking through valleys, occasional settlements appearing as distant clusters of light as dusk fell. They didn't stop again, the dragons drawing on hidden reserves of strength as they continued southeastward. Night descended fully, the stars once again providing natural guidance. Harry drifted in and out of sleep, his body adjusting to the rhythm of dragon flight. Each time he woke, Liliana was alert behind him, sometimes talking quietly with nearby riders using communication spells that carried their voices despite the wind. Dawn brought their first glimpse of Ukrainian territory, rolling plains giving way to the eastern edges of the Carpathian mountain range. "Almost home," Liliana told him, her voice revealing exhaustion beneath its encouragement. "Just a few more hours." The dragons sensed their proximity to their sanctuary, their pace increasing despite obvious fatigue. Sparks' wing beats became more powerful, her head raised higher as familiar mountains appeared on the horizon. "Look there," Liliana pointed as they began their approach. The Carpathians. The dragon's ancestral home in Europe. Harry gazed in wonder at the rugged peaks rising before them, mist clinging to forested slopes. Unlike the gentle hills of Britain, these mountains seemed wild and ancient, untamed by human presence. "I don't see anything that looks like a sanctuary," he admitted. Liliana laughed. "That's the point. The sanctuary is hidden by some of the oldest magic in Europe. Watch." As they flew between two particularly tall peaks, the air seemed to shimmer and part like a curtain. Beyond lay a hidden valley that shouldn't have been possible, wider and deeper than the surrounding geography suggested, filled with lush forest and meadows. And dragons. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, flying freely or resting in specially designed habitats that blended with the natural landscape. Structures built into mountainsides, towers rising from strategic peaks, and at the center, a collection of buildings that resembled a small city. "Welcome to Dragonhold," Dragomir called back from Tempest's lead position. The heart of the Romanian dragon sanctuary. The arriving formation was spotted immediately. Horns sounded from watchtowers, and more dragons rose to meet them, circling in what Harry somehow knew was a greeting pattern. They descended toward a massive plateau jutting from the central mountain, its surface large enough to accommodate all 30 dragons simultaneously. Staff rushed forward as they landed, helping exhausted riders dismount while dragon healers immediately began checking the mounts for signs of distress after their marathon journey. When Harry slid from Sparks' back, his legs gave way entirely. 2 days of flying had left his muscles useless. A burly man caught him before he hit the ground, setting him gently on his feet. "First-time long-distance flyer, eh?" the man said kindly, his English heavily accented. "Don't worry, little one. Few days of proper rest, you'll be running around like you were born on dragonback. Liliana dismounted more gracefully but looked nearly as exhausted as Harry felt. She dismissed the offered assistance, keeping a protective hand on Harry's shoulder. "This is Harry," she told the gathering staff. "He's under dragon protection. Treat him as you would a rider candidate." Murmurs spread through the crowd as they recognized the famous scar partially hidden by Harry's unruly hair. Dragomir's authoritative voice cut through the growing noise. "Harry Potter is our guest and under sanctuary protection. He's had a difficult journey and needs rest, food, and medical attention. Standard protocols apply, no questions, no crowding." The staff responded with disciplined efficiency, clearing a path toward the main complex. Harry noticed how naturally they deferred to Dragomir despite obvious curiosity about the famous child in their midst. "Come," Liliana said, guiding him forward. "Let's get you settled." They followed a path from the landing plateau to buildings nestled against the mountainside. Unlike the rigid stone of Hogwarts that Harry would later come to know, these structures seemed to grow from the mountain itself, organic shapes of stone and wood that complemented rather than conquered their environment. Inside, warm lighting revealed comfortable spaces designed for both humans and occasional dragon visitors, with high ceilings and wide corridors. Staff members nodded respectfully as they passed, but true to Dragomir's orders, none approached or questioned. "This will be your room," Liliana announced, opening a wooden door carved with dragon motifs. Harry gasped at the space revealed, larger than Dudley's bedroom, with a comfortable-looking bed, a desk, bookshelves, and most surprisingly, a balcony overlooking the valley. Large windows filled the room with natural light, and a cheerful fire burned in a small hearth. "All this, for me?" he asked, unable to comprehend such luxury after years in a cupboard. "Of course," Liliana replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Every person deserves proper living space. Especially growing children." Harry entered hesitantly, half expecting someone to laugh and reveal it was all a joke. When no one did, he slowly explored the room, touching the soft bed covers, the solid wooden furniture, the books filled with moving pictures of dragons. "The washroom is through that door," Liliana explained, pointing. "Clean clothes in the wardrobe. A healer will visit shortly to check you over, then food will be brought." "What happens after that?" Harry asked, suddenly worried about being left alone in this strange place. Liliana's expression softened. "Rest, Harry. That's all that happens today. Tomorrow, when you're recovered, we'll show you around. Introduce you properly to the dragons. Begin explaining everything you need to know. And, you'll be nearby. My quarters are just down the hall," she assured him. "I'm your designated guardian while you're here. If you need anything, anything at all, just call my name. The rooms are enchanted to alert me." This seemed to satisfy Harry, who nodded while stifling a yawn. The journey's exhaustion was catching up with him rapidly now that they'd stopped moving. "The healer first," Liliana reminded him gently. "Then you can sleep as long as you need." While Harry settled into his new accommodations, Dragomir faced a more challenging task, explaining their actions to the Romanian Minister of Magic. Minister Lupescu paced the sanctuary's communication chamber, her elegant robes swirling with each sharp turn. The magical projection of her face in the central fire showed lines of strain that hadn't been there a week ago. "An international incident, Dragomir," she exclaimed. "Britain is in an uproar. The ICW is demanding explanations. Even the Muggle Prime Minister has noticed something, they're blaming unauthorized military aircraft crossing European airspace." "The ancient right was properly invoked," Dragomir replied calmly. "Madame Marchbanks confirmed it herself. That's the only reason you're not facing charges." Minister Lupescu countered. "Do you have any idea of the diplomatic nightmare you've created? Harry Potter isn't just any magical child. His fame doesn't exempt him from protection," Dragomir said firmly. "If anything, it made his situation more outrageous. Britain's hero, living in a cupboard, Minister. Starved and neglected while their magical government looked the other way. The minister's expression softened slightly. Is it really that bad? Worse than I'm describing. We have pensive memories if you need convincing. She sighed, the fire projection flickering with the motion. That won't be necessary. I trust your judgment regarding child welfare. But the political situation remains explosive. The British will present their case at the emergency ICW session, Dragomir acknowledged. We'll present ours. Let international law decide. And if it goes against us? Dragomir's expression hardened. Then we invoke the deeper protocols of the right. The dragons chose to protect him, Minister. That means something older than the ICW itself. Minister Lupescu studied him for a long moment. There's more to this, isn't there? Something you haven't reported officially. Dragomir hesitated, then nodded. The dragons are unusually interested in him. Not just protective but personally invested. Several hatchlings have become agitated since his arrival, demanding to see him. A potential bonding, she asked, eyebrows rising. Possibly. Too soon to know. The minister's expression turned thoughtful. That would change matters considerably. A foreign-born wizard bonding with a Romanian dragon hasn't happened in, how long? Not since the Grindelwald era, Dragomir supplied. Michael Carlson from Sweden, 1938. And he became a Romanian citizen automatically under the ancient laws, she mused. Which Britain agreed to as ICW founding members. I'm not suggesting we manipulate a child for political advantage, Dragomir said quickly. Of course not, she agreed. But if a natural bonding occurs, the legal situation shifts in our favor. She straightened, decision made. Proceed with standard protocols for a child under protection. If dragon interest continues, allow supervised interaction with appropriate hatchlings. And the British demands for his return? I'll handle the diplomacy, she said firmly. You focus on the boy's welfare. Document everything, Dragomir, his condition upon arrival, his progress here, any evidence of prior neglect. We'll need it all for the ICW hearing. After the minister's projection faded, Dragomir remained in the chamber, reviewing the events that had led to this extraordinary situation. 30 years of working with dragons had taught him to trust their instincts. If they had collectively decided Harry Potter needed their protection, reasons existed beyond what humans might immediately understand. He left the chamber determined to discover those reasons, whatever international diplomatic storms might result. Harry woke to sunlight streaming through windows larger than any he'd ever had access to. For several confused moments, he couldn't remember where he was. The comfortable bed, the spacious room, the distant calls of dragons outside, none matched his cupboard reality. Then memory rushed back, the rescue, the flight, the arrival at Dragonhold. He sat up, noticing he wore soft pajamas that actually fit, unlike Dudley's cast-offs. A knock at the door made him jump slightly. Harry? Are you awake? Liliana's voice called. Yes, he replied, still marveling at being asked rather than ordered. Liliana entered carrying a tray of food, eggs, bread, fruit, and something that smelled like cocoa but wasn't quite the same. She wore similar leather riding clothes to yesterday but looked refreshed after proper rest. You slept nearly 14 hours, she said, setting the tray on a small table. How do you feel? Harry considered this seriously. His muscles ached from flying, but otherwise. Good, he decided. Really good. Excellent. Eat, then dress. I'll wait outside. Today you meet the dragons properly. Harry needed no encouragement to eat. The food was simple but delicious, and nobody was limiting his portions or telling him he didn't deserve it. When he finished, he found clothes in the wardrobe, sturdy pants, a comfortable shirt, boots that adjusted magically to fit his feet perfectly. Outside his room, Liliana waited with another rider, a young woman with dark skin and tightly braided hair who introduced herself as Elena. I'm second commander, she explained as they walked through corridors bustling with activity. And I've known these dragons longer than anyone except Dragomir. They're quite eager to meet you officially. Why? Harry asked, the question that had been bothering him since his rescue. Why are they so interested in me specifically? Elena and Liliana exchanged looks. Dragons sense magic differently than humans, Elena explained. They're particularly attuned to magical children whose abilities are being suppressed or blocked. Blocked? What does that mean? Magic needs nurturing to develop properly, Liliana continued. Children raised in supportive magical environments naturally learn to control their abilities. Those in less supportive situations often develop blocks, unconscious barriers that prevent their magic from flowing naturally. And the dragons can sense that. They sense the potential beneath the blocks, Elena clarified. Like hearing a beautiful voice struggling to sing through a gag. It distresses them greatly. They emerged onto a wide terrace overlooking a verdant valley basin. Below, dragons of various sizes and colors lounged in the morning sun, flew in playful patterns, or worked alongside human handlers on tasks Harry couldn't identify. This is the nursery section, Elena explained, pointing to an area where smaller dragons gathered. Where hatchlings grow until they're ready to either bond with riders or join the wild colonies. They descended stone steps toward the nursery, passing riders and handlers who nodded respectfully. Harry noticed how many stopped to watch him, curiosity evident in their expressions. Word travels fast, Liliana murmured. Everyone knows who you are now. The famous Harry Potter, Harry said uncomfortably. The child the dragons called us to rescue, she corrected gently. Your fame matters less here than the dragon's interest in you. The nursery area proved to be a series of connected meadows with shallow caves set into surrounding rock faces. Young dragons ranging from the size of large dogs to small horses played, practiced flying, or received instruction from older dragons under handler supervision. As Harry approached, the young dragons stopped their activities, heads turning toward him with uncanny synchronization. A ripple of excitement passed through them, communicated in rumbles and tail flicks that needed no translation. One dragon, copper-colored with golden eyes, separated from the group, approaching cautiously but determinedly. About the size of a pony but with a more slender build, the young dragon moved with surprising grace for its age. That's Firebrand, Elena said softly. Hatched just 6 months ago. Romanian longhorn, like Sparks, but with unusually colored scales. Firebrand stopped a few meters from Harry, stretching his neck forward to sniff the air between them. The young dragon's nostrils flared, taking in Harry's scent with obvious interest. What should I do? Harry whispered. Just stand still, Liliana advised. Let him approach at his pace. Firebrand took another step forward, then another, golden eyes never leaving Harry's face. When only an arm's length separated them, the dragon lowered his head to Harry's level and waited. He's inviting you to touch him, Elena explained. If you want to. Harry hesitated only briefly before extending his hand, palm forward as he'd seen Liliana do with Sparks. Firebrand closed the final distance, pressing his snout against Harry's palm. Warmth flooded through Harry, accompanied by a strange tingling sensation that raced up his arm and spread throughout his body. Images flashed in his mind, soaring through clouds, hunting in forests, sleeping curled beside a fire. Emotions followed, curiosity, excitement, and something like recognition, as if meeting a friend after long separation. Oh! Harry gasped, startled but not frightened. What do you feel? Elena asked sharply. He's showing me things. How it feels to fly. How deer taste when hunted. Harry struggled to describe the sensation. He's saying hello. Liliana and Elena exchanged significant glances. Natural receptivity, Elena murmured. Without training. Is that bad? Harry asked, still connected to Firebrand, who had begun making a rumbling purr-like sound. Not bad, Liliana assured him. Unusual. Special. Firebrand pressed closer, circling Harry like an oversized cat, occasionally bumping him with his head or wing. Harry laughed, tension melting away as he instinctively began to pet the dragon's scales, warm and smooth like sun-heated metal. Other young dragons watched with interest but maintained their distance, seeming to recognize something in the interaction that required space. Adult handlers observed more critically, making notes and whispering among themselves. Can I learn more about him?" Harry asked, already feeling connected to the copper dragon. "That's why we're here," Liliana smiled. "Today is just introduction. If the connection continues, you'll begin learning basic dragon communication. All children in the sanctuary receive this training. Even if they're not riders. Everyone who lives with dragons learns their ways," Elena explained. "Rider, handler, healer, scholar, all roles are important here." For the next hour, Harry sat in the meadow with Firebrand, the young dragon alternately showing off flying skills and returning to press against Harry's side. Other hatchlings eventually approached, introduced by handlers who explained their names, breeds, and personalities. Harry absorbed everything eagerly, asking questions that revealed both his intelligence and his complete lack of prior magical education. The handlers answered patiently, many clearly charmed by his genuine enthusiasm for their dragons. "Enough for today," Liliana eventually announced, noting Harry's flagging energy. "There's much more to show you, but we have time." Harry reluctantly said goodbye to Firebrand, who seemed equally reluctant to see him leave. The young dragon watched them climb the steps back toward the main complex, only returning to his cohort when Harry disappeared from view. "He really liked me," Harry said, unable to keep the wonder from his voice. "Very much so," Elena agreed, her expression thoughtful. "Tomorrow you'll meet with our dragon healer. She'll help assess your magical core and begin exercises to remove any blocks." "Will that hurt?" Harry asked apprehensively. "Not at all," Liliana assured him. "The blocks form to protect you in a harmful environment. Now that you're safe, they can gradually dissolve with proper guidance." As they re-entered the main complex, Dragomir appeared, engaged in serious conversation with a stern-looking wizard in formal robes. They broke off their discussion as Harry approached. "Ah, our young guest," Dragomir said. "How was your introduction to the nursery?" "Brilliant," Harry replied enthusiastically. "Firebrand showed me how it feels to fly as a dragon." Dragomir's eyebrows rose. "Did he now?" "Most interesting." The formal wizard studied Harry with increased attention. "Mental imagery sharing?" "Already." "Natural receptivity," Elena confirmed. "And Firebrand was quite insistent on being first to meet him." "I see." The wizard bowed slightly to Harry. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Potter. I am Radu Antonescu, ambassador to the International Confederation of Wizards for Romania. He's here to help prepare our case for your protective status," Dragomir explained. Harry's expression fell. "Are they still trying to send me back?" "Britain has formally requested your return," Ambassador Antonescu confirmed. "The ICW will hold a special hearing in 27 days. Until then, you remain under sanctuary protection." "And after?" Harry asked, the fear in his voice unmistakable. "That depends partly on you," the ambassador said carefully. "Your testimony regarding your previous living conditions will be important." Harry paled slightly. "Will I have to see the Dursleys again?" "Absolutely not," Liliana said firmly, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "Pensive memories will suffice for evidence." "Pensive?" Harry repeated, unfamiliar with the term. "A magical device that allows others to view your memories," Dragomir explained. "But that's for later. Today and tomorrow are for you to rest, recover, and begin learning about your new environment." "What about Firebrand?" Harry asked. "Can I see him again tomorrow?" The adults exchanged glances that contained an entire conversation Harry couldn't interpret. "Yes," Dragomir decided. Daily visits to the nursery will be part of your schedule. For now, lunch, Liliana suggested, guiding Harry toward the dining hall. You need proper nutrition to make up for lost time. As they walked away, Harry heard Ambassador Antonescu murmur to Dragomir, potential bonding this young? The British will fight twice as hard if they suspect. Then we ensure they don't suspect until it's too late to matter, Dragomir replied quietly. Harry didn't understand the significance of their words, but instinctively knew better than to ask. Some explanations, he was learning, came only when adults decided you were ready to hear them. In Britain, the political fallout from Harry's extraction had reached fever pitch. The Daily Prophet published special editions with headlines screaming about foreign dragon invasion and boy WHO lived kidnapped, while the ministry struggled to control both the narrative and the actual breach of magical security. Albus Dumbledore sat in the minister's office, listening patiently as Cornelius Fudge ranted about public opinion polls and international embarrassment. And Lucius Malfoy is stirring up the Wisengamot, Fudge continued, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. Claiming this proves my administration is weak on national security. Me. Weak. When it was your blood wards that failed, Dumbledore. The wards didn't fail, Cornelius, Dumbledore corrected gently. They protected Harry from magical threats as designed. They weren't created to prevent those with no ill intent from approaching. No ill intent. They stole him. They removed him from what they perceived as a harmful environment, Dumbledore clarified. An assessment that, I must admit, appears justified based on what we observed. Fudge paused in his pacing, expression shifting from outrage to calculation. Yes, those muggles, disgraceful situation. Perhaps we should emphasize that angle. That we were unaware of his mistreatment. Claiming ignorance may not serve us well, Dumbledore cautioned. Better to acknowledge that mistakes were made in monitoring Harry's welfare, but emphasize that Britain remains his proper home. Yes, yes, Fudge nodded eagerly. National identity. Cultural heritage. His parents' sacrifice for Britain. That's the approach. The office door opened without a knock, admitting Lucius Malfoy. The aristocratic wizard nodded coldly to Dumbledore before addressing Fudge. Minister, the emergency Wisengamot session is assembled. They await your statement on the Potter situation. Ah, Lucius, Fudge said nervously. Yes, well, Dumbledore and I were just discussing our approach. Indeed? Malfoy's gaze slid to Dumbledore. I wonder if the Chief Warlock's judgment should be quite so trusted, given recent failures. Now see here, Fudge blustered, caught between his two most influential advisors. The Wisengamot might benefit from hearing multiple perspectives, Dumbledore suggested mildly. Including those who question my decisions. Transparency serves us best in this situation. Malfoy looked momentarily wrong-footed by Dumbledore's easy agreement. Well, yes. Quite right. As they walked toward the Wisengamot chambers, Malfoy fell into step beside Dumbledore, speaking quietly enough that Fudge, walking ahead, couldn't hear. A fascinating development, wouldn't you say? The boy who lived, raised by foreign dragon handlers. One wonders how that might influence his future alignments. I believe Harry's character will develop admirably regardless of location, Dumbledore replied, watching Malfoy carefully. Though I maintain Britain is where he belongs. Oh, certainly, Malfoy agreed smoothly. Though some of my associates find it rather convenient that the child has been removed from your influence. Almost as if certain interested parties arranged it. If you're suggesting Voldemort's remaining supporters orchestrated this, I find that unlikely, Dumbledore said. Dragon magic is notoriously resistant to dark influence. Malfoy's expression tightened at the casual use of Voldemort's name. I merely observe that power vacuums create opportunities, Dumbledore. The boy's absence creates such a vacuum. A temporary absence only, Dumbledore assured him. The ICW hearing will determine his proper placement. Indeed. And what evidence will you present regarding those unfortunate muggles? The public finds the cupboard particularly distressing. The subtle emphasis on public confirmed Dumbledore's suspicion that Lucius had already been feeding information to the press. The truth, Lucius. Always the best approach in such matters. Malfoy's lip curled slightly. How very Gryffindor of you. They entered the Wisengamot chamber to find all seats filled, with reporters crowding the public gallery. The coming hours would shape Britain's official response to Harry's situation, and Dumbledore knew every word would be scrutinized not only by the public but by the Romanian officials preparing their own case for the ICW. The diplomatic chess match had only just begun. Harry's first week at Dragonhold passed in a whirlwind of new experiences. Each morning began with a visit to healer Katrina, a grandmotherly witch who performed gentle diagnostic spells to assess his physical and magical health. Malnutrition, minor bone density issues, slight myopia, she listed during their first session. All fixable with proper care and nutrition potions. More concerning to her were the magical findings. Significant core binding, she murmured, watching colored lights dance around Harry as he sat on an examination table. Some natural, some imposed. Imposed? Liliana asked sharply from where she observed. Someone deliberately bound his magic. Healer Katrina nodded grimly. Subtle work. Not complete binding, that would be immediately noticeable, but restrictive channels forcing his magic into specific patterns. Is that why I can't control when strange things happen? Harry asked. Precisely, Katrina confirmed. Your natural magic is powerful, but these bindings only allow it to escape in bursts when your emotions overcome the restrictions. With proper unblocking, you'll gain control rather than having occasional accidental discharges. The unblocking exercises began simply, meditation techniques where Harry visualized his magic as water flowing through increasingly wider channels. Initially frustrating, they gradually became easier as he practiced daily under Katrina's guidance. Between healing sessions, Liliana and other instructors began teaching Harry magical basics, theory, history, and simple wandless exercises appropriate for his age. Most magical children don't begin formal education until 11, Instructor Bogdan explained during a lesson on magical theory. But those in magical households learn the foundations much earlier. We're simply giving you what you should have had already. Harry proved an eager student, particularly when lessons connected to dragons. His daily visits to Firebrand became the highlight of his routine, the young dragon's excitement at seeing him never diminishing. By the end of the first week, their connection had strengthened noticeably. Harry found himself sometimes knowing what Firebrand was thinking before the dragon communicated it, while Firebrand demonstrated an uncanny awareness of Harry's emotions. They're remarkably compatible, Elena observed to Dragomir as they watched Harry and Firebrand playing a complex game involving a hovering ball that responded to magical energy. Too young for formal bonding, Dragomir reminded her. By at least 6 years. I know the protocols, Elena replied. But you can't deny what's happening naturally. The Romanian dragons have chosen their champion in the coming conflict. Harry isn't a weapon or political tool, Dragomir said sharply. Of course not, Elena agreed. But he is a child with remarkable magical potential who forms natural connections with dragons. That has implications beyond politics. Dragomir watched thoughtfully as Harry laughed, Firebrand catching the magical ball in mid-air before returning it to the boy. The British delegation arrives tomorrow, he said finally. Prepare Harry. They'll want to speak with him directly. Will you allow it? Elena asked. Under controlled conditions, yes. He needs to understand all sides of this situation before the formal hearing. The British delegation arrived with characteristic pomp despite their technically unofficial status. Albus Dumbledore led the group, accompanied by Amelia Bones, Arthur Weasley as a ministry representative, and surprisingly, Minerva McGonagall. Dragomir greeted them in the sanctuary's formal receiving hall, a circular chamber whose walls featured animated murals depicting the history of Romanian dragon handling. Chief Warlock, he acknowledged with a respectful but minimal bow. "Welcome to Dragonhold." "Commander Volchanov," Dumbledore replied. "Thank you for agreeing to this preliminary meeting." "The ancient rite doesn't prohibit dialogue," Dragomir said. "Only forced removal of the protected child." "Yes, well, we hope to assess Harry's well-being directly," Amelia Bones stated. "As his legal magical guardian, the Ministry has concerns." "Legal magical guardian?" Dragomir repeated, eyebrow raised. "I was under the impression his guardianship was assigned to his Muggle relatives." "The Ministry maintains oversight of magical children in Muggle households," Arthur Weasley explained somewhat uncomfortably. "Especially in cases involving orphaned magical children." "Interesting that this oversight didn't extend to regular welfare checks," Dragomir observed. Minerva McGonagall's lips tightened into a thin line. "Some of us expressed concerns about his placement from the beginning," she said, with a pointed glance at Dumbledore. "Perhaps we could speak with Harry directly?" Dumbledore suggested, redirecting the conversation. "To assure ourselves of his comfort here." "He's currently with the dragons," Dragomir replied. "I've arranged for him to join us shortly. In the meantime, Healer Katrina will brief you on his physical and magical condition upon arrival." Healer Katrina stepped forward, scrolls floating beside her. "Mr. Potter arrived with multiple health issues consistent with long-term neglect," she began without preamble. "Malnutrition, vitamin deficiencies, improperly healed minor fractures, and untreated myopia." "Fractures?" Amelia Bones asked sharply. "A wrist and 2 fingers, healed incorrectly," Katrina confirmed. "Consistent with defensive injuries or falls without proper medical treatment." McGonagall made a sound of distress while Arthur Weasley paled visibly. "More concerning were the magical findings," Katrina continued, unrolling a diagram showing a child's outline with colored energy flows. "Significant natural blocks resulting from suppression of accidental magic through punishment, and evidence of artificial channeling spells." "Channeling spells?" Dumbledore repeated, his usual composure slipping slightly. "I placed no such spells on Harry." "Someone did," Katrina stated flatly. "Advanced work, subtle but effective. His magical core has been effectively corseted, allowing minimal expression except during emotional extremes." Before Dumbledore could respond, the chamber doors opened to admit Liliana and Harry. The boy looked remarkably different from the skinny, frightened child they'd seen at Privet Drive. 1 week of proper care had already begun to fill out his frame. He wore simplified dragon rider leathers, his hair still untidy but his eyes clear and alert behind new, properly fitted glasses. "Harry," Dumbledore greeted warmly, blue eyes twinkling. "How wonderful to see you looking so well." Harry regarded the elderly wizard cautiously, staying close to Liliana's side. "Hello, Professor Dumbledore. They told me you'd be visiting." "We've been concerned about you, my boy," Dumbledore continued. "Quite a dramatic departure from your aunt and uncle's home." "You mean my cupboard," Harry replied directly, causing Arthur Weasley to wince. "Yes, well," Dumbledore's expression turned regretful. "I was unaware of the specific accommodations they provided. A serious oversight on my part." Minerva McGonagall stepped forward, her stern features softening as she addressed Harry. "Mr. Potter, I'm Professor McGonagall. I was a friend of your parents, particularly your mother." Harry's eyes widened. "You knew my mum?" "I taught her at Hogwarts," McGonagall confirmed. "She was exceptionally talented, particularly in charms and potions." "And my dad? James Potter was remarkably gifted in transfiguration," she said with a small smile. "Though he applied his talents to mischief more often than academics." Harry drank in these small details about his parents, clearly treasuring them. Dragomir observed the interaction carefully, noting how skillfully McGonagall established rapport through personal connection rather than authority. "Harry," Amelia Bones spoke up, "are you being treated well here? Are you comfortable? Safe?" Harry nodded emphatically. "Everyone's been brilliant. I have my own room with windows and everything. I get proper meals. And I'm learning about magic and dragons, and," he stopped, suddenly cautious. "It's really good here." "We're pleased to hear that," Dumbledore said. "Though we hope you understand that your place is ultimately in Britain. Your parents would have wanted you raised in your home culture, among your own people." Harry frowned slightly. "My parents wanted me safe and happy, didn't they? I wasn't either of those things at the Dursleys." "A situation we deeply regret," Arthur Weasley interjected. "And one that would be rectified immediately. There are many magical families who would be honored to welcome you into their homes." "Now that your treatment has come to light," McGonagall added pointedly. "Harry," Dumbledore said gently, "while I understand your current comfort here, there are protections that exist only when you reside with your mother's blood relatives. Protections your mother created through her sacrifice." "The Blood Wards," Harry said, surprising the British delegation with his knowledge. "Commander Dragomir explained those. But he also said there are other ways to create protections that don't require living with people who hate magic." Dumbledore looked briefly disconcerted. "The blood protection is uniquely powerful, Harry. It shields you from those who might wish you harm." "Like Voldemort's followers?" Harry asked directly. The British visitors flinched at the name, except for Dumbledore. "Precisely," Dumbledore confirmed. "Many of whom remain at large, potentially seeking revenge for their master's defeat." "But Romania has protections too," Harry countered. "Dragon magic is some of the oldest and strongest. That's what Instructor Bogdan teaches in magical theory." Dragomir suppressed a smile, impressed by how quickly Harry had absorbed his early lessons and applied them to his situation. "Perhaps," Liliana suggested, "Harry could show you some of what he's learned this week. His progress has been remarkable." Harry brightened at this suggestion, clearly eager to demonstrate his new knowledge. With Liliana's encouragement, he performed several of the magical exercises he'd been practicing, calling light to his fingertips, making a feather hover briefly, and most impressively, projecting a simple image of a dragon that hung in the air for several seconds before dissipating. "Wandless visualization at age 4. McGonagall murmured, clearly impressed. "The removal of artificial restrictions has accelerated his natural development," Healer Katrina explained. "Though we're proceeding cautiously to avoid magical exhaustion." "Most interesting," Dumbledore said, studying Harry with renewed attention. "You've made remarkable progress, Harry. Perhaps you'd like to continue these studies at Hogwarts when you're older? Will there be dragons at Hogwarts?" Harry asked. Sadly no," Dumbledore admitted. "Though our gamekeeper Hagrid would certainly appreciate your enthusiasm for magical creatures." Harry looked distinctly unimpressed by this alternative. "I believe," Dragomir interjected, "Harry has his regular time with the nursery dragons now. Would you care to observe? It might provide insight into why the dragons responded so strongly to his situation." The offer, though politely framed, was calculated. Dragomir knew Harry's interactions with Firebrand would demonstrate more clearly than any argument why the sanctuary might be the boy's ideal environment. "We'd be delighted," Dumbledore agreed, eyes twinkling with genuine curiosity. As they walked through the sanctuary toward the nursery grounds, Harry gradually relaxed, excitedly pointing out features of Dragonhold to the visitors. His natural enthusiasm broke through his initial caution, especially when describing his daily activities and lessons. Upon reaching the nursery meadow, the British delegation halted in surprise at the greeting that awaited. Firebrand, spotting Harry immediately, bounded across the field with a joyful rumble, several other young dragons following at a more sedate pace. "Firebrand!" Harry called happily, meeting the copper dragon halfway. The visitors watched in amazement as Harry fearlessly embraced the young dragon's neck, Firebrand curling around him protectively while making sounds remarkably like purring. "Extraordinary," McGonagall breathed. "He shows no fear whatsoever." "Why would he fear a friend?" Liliana asked simply. Dumbledore observed the interaction with sharp interest. "This particular dragon seems quite attached to Harry." Firebrand selected Harry during their first meeting, Dragomir explained. Such natural affinity is rare but not unprecedented. Selected? Amelia Bones repeated. You don't mean. They're too young for formal bonding, Dragomir clarified quickly. That process doesn't begin until a child reaches at least 10 years of age. This is merely compatibility recognition. Harry demonstrated this compatibility by sitting cross-legged in the grass, Firebrand curled beside him. Other young dragons approached cautiously, acknowledging the British visitors with curious sniffs before focusing on Harry. With visible concentration, Harry produced another small light between his palms, similar to his earlier demonstration but slightly different in color. Firebrand responded by producing a tiny flame that matched Harry's light precisely, the two energies hovering inches apart, resonating visibly. Sympathetic magic, Dumbledore murmured. Without training. His natural abilities are emerging as the restrictions dissolve, Liliana confirmed. Particularly in dragon-related magic. The demonstration continued for nearly an hour, Harry showing increasingly complex interactions with Firebrand and the other young dragons. The British delegation watched with expressions ranging from amazement to concern, clearly reassessing their assumptions about Harry's situation. Finally, as they prepared to depart, Dumbledore requested a private moment with Harry. After confirming Harry's comfort with this, Dragomir allowed them to speak at a slight distance, though Liliana remained within eyesight. Harry, Dumbledore began gently, I owe you an apology. I placed you with your aunt and uncle believing it was in your best interest, but I failed to ensure you were treated with the care and respect you deserve. Harry studied the elderly wizard, his young face surprisingly solemn. Why didn't anyone ever check on me? All those years in the cupboard. Dumbledore's expression showed genuine regret. A grave error in judgment. I believed the blood protection paramount and trusted your family would overcome their differences with the magical world. I was wrong. I don't want to go back, Harry said firmly. Not ever. I understand your feelings, Dumbledore assured him. And I promise you will never return to those circumstances. But Britain is your home, Harry. Your heritage. Where your parents lived and died protecting our world. Romania feels like home now, Harry countered. The dragons understand me. Firebrand. He trailed off, looking toward his draconic friend. He needs me. And I need him. Dumbledore sighed softly. You formed a remarkable connection in a very short time. But consider this, at Hogwarts, you would learn magic from the same professors who taught your parents. You would walk the same halls they walked, perhaps make friends with the children of their friends. Harry hesitated, clearly torn by this appeal to his desperate desire for connection to his parents. The ICW hearing will determine your placement, Dumbledore continued. But I want you to know that whatever happens, I will ensure your welfare remains paramount. No more cupboards, Harry. No more neglect. Too late, Harry said simply, with the brutal honesty of childhood. You already messed up once. With that, he turned and rejoined Liliana, effectively ending the conversation. Dumbledore watched him go, an unreadable expression crossing his aged features before he rejoined his colleagues. A remarkable child, McGonagall observed as they prepared to depart. Lily and James would be proud of his spirit. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. Though I fear this situation has become more complex than anticipated. You mean the dragon connection? Arthur Weasley asked. Surely that can't override legal guardianship. Under normal circumstances, no, Amelia Bones replied. But the ancient right of draconic protection predates most modern magical law. And if a true bonding begins to form, that would indeed change matters considerably, Dumbledore acknowledged. We must prepare our case carefully for the ICW hearing. As the British delegation departed via International Port Key, Dragomir found Harry watching from a balcony overlooking the departure point. What did you think of your visitors? He asked, joining the boy. Harry considered the question seriously. Professor McGonagall seemed nice. She told me about my parents. And Dumbledore? Harry frowned slightly. He's sorry now. But where was he before? When I really needed help. A fair question, Dragomir agreed. One the ICW will likely ask as well. Will they make me go back to Britain? Harry asked, the worry he'd been hiding from the visitors now evident in his voice. Dragomir placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Whatever happens, Harry, you will never return to an abusive home. Dragon protection ensures that much at minimum. But they might take me away from Firebrand. The genuine anguish in the question confirmed what Dragomir had already suspected, the connection forming between boy and dragon ran deeper than anyone had anticipated. Whether natural affinity or something more profound, separating them now would cause genuine trauma to both. Rest assured, Dragomir said firmly, the dragons have a say in this matter too. And dragons are notoriously stubborn when protecting what they consider theirs. The answer seemed to satisfy Harry, who smiled slightly before returning his gaze to the sky, where free dragons soared above the sanctuary, a sight that symbolized everything his new home had come to represent. Chapter 3, The Bonding. 3 weeks after Harry's rescue, Firebrand refused to eat. He's just sitting there staring at the entrance, a worried handler reported to Liliana. Won't touch his food, won't join training exercises. Nothing. Harry, overhearing this while practicing his morning meditation exercises, jumped up immediately. I need to see him. Liliana didn't argue. The bond between Harry and the copper dragon had strengthened daily, developing in ways that surprised even the most experienced dragon handlers at the sanctuary. She'd learned to trust Harry's instincts where Firebrand was concerned. They hurried to the nursery area where Firebrand lay curled at the edge of the training meadow, his golden eyes fixed on the path leading from the main complex. The moment he spotted Harry, the young dragon leapt to his feet, releasing a happy rumble that vibrated through the ground. Hey buddy, what's wrong? Harry called, running the last few meters to his draconic friend. They said you won't eat. Firebrand bumped his head against Harry's chest, nearly knocking the small boy over. Images flashed through Harry's mind, flying together, hunting together, being together, not just for visits but permanently. He's trying to tell you something, Liliana said, watching the interaction carefully. Harry nodded, his face screwed up in concentration as he sorted through the mental pictures Firebrand was sending. He says we're supposed to be together more. That I'm not supposed to leave him alone so much. Interesting, Liliana murmured. The standard separation protocol isn't working for him. Harry looked up, confused. What's that mean? Normally, young dragons and potential riders spend limited time together until formal bonding age, around 10 for humans, 2 years for dragons. It helps both develop independently. She studied Firebrand's agitated movements. But some pairs can't tolerate separation. It happens rarely, usually with. With what? Harry prompted when she trailed off. With dragons and riders who are magically synchronized, she finished. It's extremely uncommon, especially with someone your age. Harry turned back to Firebrand, placing his small hands on either side of the dragon's face. I'm not going anywhere, he promised. But you gotta eat, okay? You need to grow big and strong. Firebrand rumbled agreement, his golden eyes never leaving Harry's face. I'll speak with Dragomir, Liliana decided. We may need to adjust your living arrangements. Harry brightened. You mean Firebrand can stay with me? We'll see. The sanctuary has protocols for synchronized pairs, but they've never been applied to someone as young as you. By dinner time, the decision had been made. Harry's quarters would be modified with an attached dragon roost accessible from his balcony. Until those modifications were complete, he would sleep in the nursery habitat with Firebrand. This changes things, Dragomir told the sanctuary's leadership council that evening. A synchronized bond forming naturally at this age is unprecedented. It strengthens our position for the hearing, Ambassador Antonescu noted. Under the ancient laws of dragon bonding, separating a synchronized pair constitutes magical endangerment. Elena shook her head. We shouldn't view this in political terms. This is about two magical beings who genuinely need each other. Unfortunately, politics cannot be ignored, Dragomir replied. The ICW hearing is in 9 days. Britain has assembled an impressive legal team challenging our invocation of the right. Let them challenge, said healer Katrina firmly. The evidence of Harry's prior mistreatment is irrefutable. And now with this synchronization manifesting. We should accelerate his training, suggested Bogdan, Harry's magical theory instructor. Not just theoretical but practical dragon bond exercises. If we can demonstrate functional synchronization, no reasonable adjudicator would rule for separation. Dragomir considered this carefully. Agreed, but cautiously. His magical core is still stabilizing from the removal of those artificial restrictions. What about the British claims to his guardianship? Asked one of the younger council members. Their legal argument seems centered on national heritage and parental wishes. We've found no evidence that Lily and James Potter specified guardianship arrangements, Ambassador Antonescu replied. Their will was apparently executed by Dumbledore directly after their deaths, with minimal ministry oversight due to the chaos following Voldemort's defeat. Convenient, Elena muttered. The ancient right supersedes standard guardianship law anyway, Dragomir reminded them. And now with synchronization occurring, we have the additional protection of the bonded pair statutes. Which Britain signed in 1712, Ambassador Antonescu confirmed with satisfaction. They can hardly repudiate their own magical treaties. So we focus on strengthening the bond while continuing Harry's healing and education, Dragomir summarized. Ambassador, prepare our legal case around both the right and the bonded pair statutes. The rest of you, adjust Harry's schedule to accommodate synchronized pair protocols. Harry woke to the gentle rumbling of Firebrand's breathing. The young dragon had curled his body around Harry's sleeping mat, one wing partially extended as a canopy. Morning light filtered through the wing membrane, casting a copper glow across the nursery habitat. Morning, Firebrand, Harry mumbled, stretching his arms above his head. The dragon responded with a happy chirp, nudging Harry's shoulder affectionately. For the past 2 nights, they'd shared the nursery habitat, and Harry had never slept better, not even in the comfortable bed of his sanctuary quarters. Something about Firebrand's presence calmed the nightmares that had plagued him since his earliest memories. A handler approached, carrying Harry's breakfast and fresh clothes. Sleep well, young rider. Harry grinned at the title. Nobody had officially called him a rider yet, but he loved how it sounded. Brilliant. Firebrand kept me warm all night. Dragons make excellent heating systems, the handler agreed with a smile. Commander Dragomir wants you both at the training grounds after breakfast. New exercises today. Harry quickly ate his fill, still marveling at the freedom to eat until satisfied, while Firebrand devoured several large fish from a separate delivery. Their synchronized morning routine already felt natural, as if they'd been together for years rather than weeks. After washing and dressing, Harry led Firebrand along the path to the training grounds, a series of interconnected clearings equipped with various obstacles, targets, and magical training aids. Dragomir waited with Elena and Bogdan, all three watching with interest as boy and dragon approached together. Good morning, Harry, Dragomir greeted. I see our sleeping arrangement experiment was successful. Harry nodded enthusiastically. Best sleep ever. And Firebrand ate all his breakfast too. Excellent. Dragomir exchanged meaningful glances with his colleagues. Today we're going to try something new, early synchronization exercises. What's that mean? Harry asked, his curiosity piqued. Normally, rider candidates don't begin these until age 10, Elena explained. But given the natural bond forming between you and Firebrand, we believe you're ready for introductory levels. Bogdan stepped forward, conjuring a series of glowing rings that hung in the air at various heights. Synchronization is about moving and thinking as one unit. These rings are attuned to recognize when dragon and rider achieve moments of perfect alignment. Harry looked at the ring skeptically. But Firebrand can't carry me yet. He's too small. This isn't about riding physically, Dragomir clarified. It's about mental and magical connection. Stand beside Firebrand and place your hand on his neck. Harry did as instructed, feeling the now familiar warmth of Firebrand's scales beneath his palm. Now, both of you look at the lowest ring, Elena directed. Harry, clear your mind and focus only on the ring. Imagine yourself moving through it. Harry concentrated, staring at a golden ring hovering just above ground level. Beside him, Firebrand did the same, his golden eyes narrowing in focus. Good, Bogdan encouraged. Now, without speaking, try to decide together which of you will move through the ring first. Harry frowned in concentration, uncertain how to communicate this without words. He felt Firebrand's attention shift slightly, sensed the dragon's eagerness to move, and somehow knew Firebrand wanted to go first. I think. Harry began. Don't speak it, Dragomir interrupted gently. Feel it. Agree without words. Harry closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the connection he felt with Firebrand. A mental image formed, Firebrand moving first, Harry following. He opened his eyes and nodded slightly. Without prompting, Firebrand stepped forward and walked through the golden ring, which glowed brighter as he passed through. Harry followed immediately after, and the ring pulsed with even more intense light. Excellent! Elena exclaimed. First try synchronization. The exercise continued with increasingly complex patterns. Sometimes Firebrand would go first, sometimes Harry. Occasionally they would move through different rings simultaneously. By mid-morning, they were completing sequences that Bogdan claimed usually took months for beginners to master. Remarkable, Dragomir murmured as they watched Harry and Firebrand navigate a particularly challenging pattern involving rings that moved unpredictably. Their magical signatures are harmonizing visibly. Indeed, a faint aura had begun to manifest around both dragon and boy, copper-colored around Firebrand, emerald green around Harry, with tendrils of golden light connecting them as they moved in synchronization. I've never seen anything like it, Elena admitted. Not even with adult bonded pairs. After 2 hours of increasingly complex exercises, Harry flopped onto the grass, laughing breathlessly as Firebrand curled around him, equally tired but visibly pleased with their progress. That was wicked! Harry exclaimed. I could feel what Firebrand was thinking. And he could feel what you were thinking, Dragomir confirmed, sitting cross-legged nearby. That's the essence of dragon rider bonding, mutual understanding without words. Harry stroked Firebrand's neck thoughtfully. But the handlers said formal bonding doesn't happen until I'm older. Typically, yes, Dragomir agreed. But your case appears to be exceptional. The bond is forming naturally, at an accelerated pace. Is that bad? Not bad, Elena assured him, joining them on the grass. Just unusual. And very special. Harry beamed at this, leaning against Firebrand's warm side. So what happens next? More training, Dragomir replied. Each day we'll work on strengthening your connection while continuing your magical education and Firebrand's physical development. And what about? Harry hesitated, his smile fading slightly. What about the hearing? Will they try to take me away from Firebrand? The adults exchanged looks. They'd been careful not to overwhelm Harry with details of the upcoming ICW proceedings, but clearly, he understood more than they'd realized. The hearing will determine your permanent placement, Dragomir acknowledged. Britain believes you belong there, with your people. We believe you belong where you're safe, happy, and able to develop your natural abilities, including your connection with Firebrand. I don't want to leave, Harry said firmly, his small hand clutching Firebrand's scales. The young dragon rumbled agreement, curling more protectively around Harry. The decision isn't ours alone, Elena explained gently. But your wishes matter, Harry. And the bond you're forming with Firebrand matters too. There are ancient magical laws protecting dragon rider pairs. Like the thing that let you rescue me? Harry asked. Similar, Dragomir confirmed. The ancient right of draconic protection justified our intervention. The bonded pair statutes may help determine your future. Harry nodded seriously, processing this information with the remarkable maturity he often displayed. Then we need to get really good at these exercises, right, Firebrand? The copper dragon rumbled enthusiastic agreement. Rest today, Dragomir instructed, rising to his feet. Tomorrow we begin intensified training for both of you. Albus Dumbledore sat in his office at Hogwarts, reviewing the latest reports from their Romanian contact. Across from him, Severus Snape waited with his usual impassive expression. It appears young Harry is adapting remarkably well to his new environment, Dumbledore observed, setting down a parchment covered in spidery handwriting. How unfortunate, Snape drawled sarcastically. The boy is thriving away from the loving care of his relatives. Shocking. Dumbledore sighed. Your point is taken, Severus. I acknowledge my error in not monitoring his situation more carefully. An error that may cost you custody permanently, from the sound of these reports. Snape gestured to the parchments. A dragon bond forming already? The Romanians couldn't have planned it better. I don't believe they planned it at all, Dumbledore replied thoughtfully. Dragon bonding cannot be artificially induced. If Harry is indeed forming a true bond with this young dragon, it's happening naturally. Which strengthens their claim considerably. Indeed. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. The ICW hearing approaches quickly, and our position grows more challenging with each report. Snape studied the older wizard carefully. You seem less concerned than expected. My primary concern has always been Harry's welfare, Dumbledore said mildly. If the Romanian sanctuary truly offers him safety, happiness, and proper magical development. You can't possibly be considering conceding, Snape interrupted, genuinely surprised. Not conceding, no. Britain is Harry's homeland, and there are compelling reasons for him to return eventually. But perhaps a compromise might be reached. What sort of compromise? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled slightly. One that acknowledges the reality of Harry's dragon bond while ensuring his eventual return to British society. The Romanians aren't unreasonable people, and they understand the political implications of permanently retaining the boy who lived. And the ministry? Fudge is hardly known for nuanced compromise. The minister will follow the path of least political damage, Dumbledore replied. Our task is to convince him that a flexible arrangement benefits Britain's image more than a bitter custody battle we might lose. Snape raised an eyebrow. You've already decided the original plan won't succeed. Let's say I'm developing contingencies, Dumbledore corrected. The reports of Harry's condition upon rescue were disturbing. I misjudged the Dursleys' capacity for basic human decency, and that mistake weakens our position considerably. Not to mention the magical bindings the Romanian healer discovered, Snape noted pointedly. Bindings you claimed no knowledge of placing. Dumbledore's expression turned grave. Yes, that remains concerning. Someone interfered with Harry's magical development, and it wasn't me. Then who? An excellent question, Dumbledore mused. One with troubling implications regardless of the answer. Harry's daily routine quickly adapted to incorporate his growing bond with Firebrand. Mornings began with synchronization exercises, followed by regular lessons in magical theory, history, and basic spell work. Afternoons typically involved practical dragon care instruction, while evenings were dedicated to Romanian language lessons, which Harry tackled with surprising enthusiasm. Dragons understand intent more than specific words, Instructor Vasile explained during one such lesson. But humans need language to communicate complex ideas. As a dragon rider in Romania, you'll need both languages. Harry nodded seriously, practicing the Romanian phrases with careful attention to pronunciation. Each new word he mastered felt like another route anchoring him to his new home, another reason he belonged here rather than Britain. Physical changes accompanied his mental and magical development. Proper nutrition and the sanctuary's rigorous activity level quickly transformed Harry from the scrawny, malnourished boy of privet drive to a healthier, more energetic child. His eyes, still startlingly green behind his new glasses, shone with enthusiasm rather than fear. Firebrand underwent equally dramatic changes. The young dragon grew visibly each week, his copper scales developing a deeper luster while his wingspan increased dramatically. Dragon handlers noted his accelerated development with amazement. "He's growing at nearly twice the normal rate for a longhorn hatchling," the head nurseryman reported to Dragomir. "His flame production has already begun, months ahead of schedule." "The bond is feeding his development," Dragomir observed. "Just as it's accelerating Harry's magical maturation." Indeed, Harry's magical abilities progressed at a pace that astonished his instructors. The removal of the artificial bindings had unleashed a natural talent that, when coupled with his connection to Firebrand, produced results normally expected from children twice his age. "He managed a sustained light charm yesterday," Bogdan reported during a staff meeting. "Without a wand. At age 4. His magical core is stabilizing beautifully," healer Katrina added. "The synchronization with Firebrand appears to be providing a natural framework for his developing abilities." "And what of his emotional healing?" Dragomir asked, concerned about aspects beyond the magical. "Progressing well," Liliana responded. "He still has nightmares occasionally, but they're decreasing in frequency. He's becoming more confident, more willing to express his needs rather than suppress them. And more attached to Romania with each passing day," Elena noted. "He asked me yesterday if he could become a Romanian citizen." This brought thoughtful silence to the meeting. The ICW hearing loomed ever closer, with delegations from magical nations worldwide preparing to attend what had become the most anticipated magical custody case in centuries. 6 days until the hearing, Ambassador Antonescu reminded them. "Our legal position is strong, but we should prepare Harry for the possibility of difficult questioning." "I'll handle that," Liliana volunteered. "He trusts me enough to discuss uncomfortable topics." "Good," Dragomir agreed. "And we should prepare for various outcomes. If the ruling goes against us, the dragons won't accept separation," Elena stated flatly. "Especially now. You've seen the synchronization aura. It's stabilizing into a permanent bond. Which gives us our strongest argument," Ambassador Antonescu acknowledged. "But politics sometimes overrules even magical reality." "Then we ensure our position is unassailable," Dragomir decided. "Continue the accelerated training. Document every advancement, every sign of the strengthening bond. And prepare the sanctuary for high-profile international visitors. The ICW observers arrive in 2 days." Harry sat cross-legged on his balcony, Firebrand curled around him in the spacious roost that had been added to his quarters. Together they watched the sunset paint the Carpathian Mountains in brilliant oranges and golds, peaceful in each other's company. The past week had been intense, additional training sessions, more complex synchronization exercises, and frequent discussions about the upcoming hearing. Harry understood more than the adults probably realized. He knew his future hung in the balance, knew powerful people wanted to send him back to Britain. "But they can't separate us," he told Firebrand, stroking the dragon's warm scales. "We won't let them." Firebrand rumbled agreement, sending a mental image of them flying away together if anyone tried to part them. Harry smiled at the dragon's simple solution. "I don't think running away would work," he said. "But I like your thinking." A knock at the door interrupted their sunset communion. Harry called permission to enter, and Liliana stepped onto the balcony, smiling at the peaceful tableau. "Comfortable?" she asked, joining them on the wide stone platform. "Perfect," Harry confirmed, leaning against Firebrand's side. "We were just discussing escape plans if the hearing goes badly." Liliana raised an eyebrow, unsurprised by Harry's directness. In the month since his rescue, he'd developed remarkable self-possession for a 4-year-old, a combination of his natural resilience and the stabilizing influence of his dragon bond. "I see," she said, settling beside him. "And what have you concluded?" "That running away probably wouldn't work," Harry admitted. "But staying apart definitely wouldn't work. On that we agree." She studied him carefully. "The ICW observers arrive tomorrow. They'll want to meet you, watch you with Firebrand." Harry nodded, having been prepared for this. "I should show them our best synchronization exercises." "Be natural," Liliana advised. "Don't perform for them, just be yourself with Firebrand. The genuine bond is more convincing than any demonstration we could choreograph." "And if they ask about the Dursleys?" Liliana's expression softened. "Tell the truth, Harry. Only as much as you're comfortable sharing, but don't hide what happened. Your experience there is part of why you're here." Harry was quiet for a moment, absently tracing patterns on Firebrand's scales. "Dumbledore will be there too, right? And the British Ministry people?" "Yes. Along with representatives from many magical nations. They all want me back in Britain." "The British delegation does," Liliana confirmed. "The others are neutral observers, there to ensure magical law is properly applied." Harry considered this, his young face serious in the fading light. "What if they make a good offer? Like, not the Dursleys, but a nice magical family?" It was the question Liliana had been anticipating. "That would be better than the Dursleys," she acknowledged. "But would it be what you want?" "I want to stay with Firebrand," Harry said immediately. "And you, and Dragomir, and everyone here. I want to be a dragon rider." Firebrand rumbled emphatic agreement, curling his tail more securely around Harry. "Then that's what you tell them," Liliana said simply. "Your wishes matter, Harry. More than politics or national pride or anyone's plans for your future. Even Dumbledore's. Especially his," Liliana affirmed. "He made a mistake placing you with the Dursleys. A serious one. That doesn't make him evil, but it does mean his judgment regarding your welfare isn't infallible." Harry nodded, processing this nuanced view of authority, something the Dursleys had never allowed him to develop. "Liliana," he asked after a moment. "If I stay here, would I ever go to Britain? To see where my parents lived?" "Of course," she assured him. "Staying here doesn't mean never visiting your homeland. When you're older, you could even attend Hogwarts for part of your education if you wanted, while maintaining your bond with Firebrand. Firebrand could come too. That would require negotiation," she admitted. "But dragon riders travel widely. Your life wouldn't be confined to the sanctuary." This seemed to satisfy Harry, who returned his gaze to the now darkening mountains. Stars had begun to appear, brilliant in the clear mountain air. "One more thing to prepare for," Liliana added gently. "The observers will want to view your memories of the Dursleys in a pensieve. Do you remember Healer Katrina explaining how that works?" Harry nodded. "She'll help take out copies of my memories so people can see what really happened." "Exactly. It won't hurt, and you don't have to watch them with the observers. But it's important evidence." "I don't mind," Harry said with surprising equanimity. "If it helps us stay together, Firebrand and me, then they should see everything." Liliana marveled at his resilience, his ability to face painful memories with courage beyond his years. Whatever the outcome of the hearing, she knew this remarkable child would shape his own destiny, with or without official permission. "Time for sleep," she said, rising to her feet. "Tomorrow will be busy." Harry yawned, suddenly aware of his tiredness. "Night, Liliana." "Night, Firebrand." As she left, Liliana glanced back to see Harry curled against Firebrand's side, the dragon's wing extending protectively over him like a living blanket. The sight reinforced her determination. Politics aside, this was where Harry belonged. The ICW delegation arrived with the formality befitting the international significance of the case. 7 observers representing different magical regions worldwide, led by Supreme Mugwump Babajit Achingbaid, established themselves in quarters prepared for their visit. "We come not to judge prematurely but to observe and report," Achingbaid announced during the formal welcome ceremony. "The full hearing will commence in 5 days at ICW headquarters, but first-hand observation is essential in cases involving the ancient rite." Dragomir, dressed in formal Romanian dragon rider regalia, bowed respectfully. "The sanctuary welcomes your scrutiny. Our invocation of the rite was proper and necessary." "So you claim," remarked the British representative, a stern-faced witch named Griselda Marchbanks. "Yet the circumstances remain unprecedented." "Indeed," agreed the Chinese delegate, Madame Wu. "Never has the rite been invoked across such distance for a child so prominently positioned in another nation's magical society." "The dragons recognize no national boundaries," Dragomir replied simply. "Nor do they acknowledge political status when a child's welfare is at risk." The observers spent their first day touring the sanctuary, learning its protocols, and reviewing documentation of Harry's condition upon arrival. Healer Katrina presented detailed reports of his physical and magical assessment, including evidence of the mysterious binding spells that had restricted his natural abilities. These constraints were deliberately placed, she explained, displaying magical diagrams that showed the artificial patterns. Not healing bindings for accidental magic control, but restrictive channels designed to suppress natural magical development. "By whom?" asked the Russian delegate sharply. "Unknown," Katrina admitted. "They bore no magical signature we could identify. But their purpose was clear, to limit Harry's magical expression to occasional bursts rather than natural development." "Troubling," Achingbaid murmured, examining the evidence. "And these have been removed?" "Gradually," Katrina confirmed. "We've been unwinding them carefully to avoid magical shock. The process is approximately 70% complete." On the second day, the observers requested their first meeting with Harry himself. Dragomir arranged for this to take place in a neutral setting, a peaceful garden within the sanctuary complex where Harry often practiced his meditation exercises. Harry arrived with Liliana, Firebrand following at a respectful distance as they practiced. The young dragon had been coached on appropriate behavior around important visitors, though his protective instincts regarding Harry remained visibly alert. "Mr. Potter," Achingbaid greeted him formally. "Thank you for meeting with us." Harry bowed slightly, as Dragomir had taught him. "Thank you for coming, sir." The observers watched with interest as Firebrand positioned himself behind Harry, alert but non-threatening. The dragon's behavior displayed a sophistication beyond his months, clear evidence of the accelerated maturity that accompanied bonding. "We understand you formed a special connection with this young dragon," Madame Wu remarked, studying them both with keen eyes. Harry nodded, automatically reaching back to place a hand on Firebrand's neck, a gesture of reassurance for both of them. "Firebrand chose me my first day here. We just understood each other right away." "Fascinating," murmured the French representative. "May we see some of this understanding demonstrated?" For the next hour, Harry and Firebrand performed various synchronization exercises, from simple movements to more complex magical interactions. They didn't approach the advanced levels they'd achieved in private training. Liliana had advised showing natural connection rather than exceptional ability, but the evidence of their bond was unmistakable. Most telling was the visible aura that now manifested whenever they worked together, copper and emerald energies intertwining with golden light that pulsed in rhythm with their movements. "A true synchronization aura," Achingbaid observed. "Remarkable in one so young." "And clearly natural," added the German representative. "This is no trained performance." After the demonstrations, the observers questioned Harry directly, their approach gentle but thorough. "Are you happy here, Mr. Potter?" asked Marchbanks. "Very happy," Harry confirmed without hesitation. "I have friends, and lessons, and nobody locks me up or calls me freak." The blunt comparison to his previous life wasn't lost on the observers, several of whom exchanged troubled glances. "Do you understand that many people in Britain care about your welfare?" Achingbaid asked carefully. That your parents were heroes there, and many wish to honor their memory by ensuring you grow up in your homeland? Harry considered this seriously. I think my parents would want me to be happy and safe, he said finally. And to learn magic properly. That's what happens here. You don't feel your magic would develop properly in Britain, pressed Marchbanks. I don't know about other places in Britain, Harry replied with surprising diplomacy. But at the Dursleys, I got punished whenever anything magical happened. And healer Katrina says someone put spells on me to stop my magic working right. This direct reference to the binding spells created visible discomfort among the observers. Would you be willing to share your memories of life with your relatives? Achingbaid asked gently. Through a pensive, so we might better understand your experience there. Harry nodded calmly. Liliana explained how it works. I don't mind. The memory extraction was scheduled for later that day, with healer Katrina overseeing the process to ensure Harry's comfort and safety. The observers departed, clearly impressed by the child's composure and the evident strength of his dragon bond. He's remarkably self-possessed for 4, Madame Wu commented to Dragomir as they walked back to the main complex. His connection with Firebrand provides stability beyond his years, Dragomir explained. Dragon bonds accelerate certain aspects of maturation, particularly emotional regulation and magical awareness. Yet he remains a child, Achingbaid noted. One who has experienced significant trauma, based on healer Katrina's reports. A trauma from which he's healing, Dragomir agreed. With the dragon's help. Later that afternoon, in a specially prepared room, Harry sat calmly as healer Katrina gently extracted silvery strands of memory from his temple, depositing them into a ornate stone basin. Just the Dursley memories, dear, she instructed softly. Think of your time there, and I'll do the rest. Harry closed his eyes, concentrating on his life at Privet Drive, the cupboard, the hunger, the punishments, the endless chores, the deliberate cruelty of Dudley, the cold neglect of Aunt Petunia, the volatile rage of Uncle Vernon. Each memory became a silvery strand that Katrina carefully collected. That's enough, she decided after several minutes. You've been very brave, Harry. The observers viewed these memories privately, their expressions growing increasingly troubled as they witnessed the reality of Harry Potter's life before rescue. The cupboard beneath the stairs. The casual cruelty. The deliberate withholding of food as punishment. The clear fear in young Harry's eyes when his uncle raised his voice. Distressing, Achingbaid said quietly when they emerged from the pensive experience. Regardless of legal jurisdictions, no magical child should live in such conditions. The blood wards Albus Dumbledore cites as justification for this placement clearly didn't protect the boy from threats within the home itself, Madame Wu observed. A grave oversight, Marchbanks agreed reluctantly. One that strengthens the Romanian claim under the ancient right. The observers spent the remainder of their visit examining every aspect of Harry's life at the sanctuary, his education, his healthcare, his social development, and most importantly, his evolving bond with Firebrand. They interviewed staff members, reviewed training records, and observed multiple sessions of various activities. On their final day, Supreme Mugwump Achingbaid requested a private meeting with Harry, Dragomir, and Firebrand. Young Mr. Potter, Achingbaid began once they were seated in Dragomir's office. In 2 days, the full ICW hearing will begin. Many important people will argue about your future. Harry nodded solemnly, his hand resting on Firebrand's neck as the young dragon lay beside his chair. Before we depart, I wish to ask you directly, what outcome do you hope for from these proceedings? Harry didn't hesitate. I want to stay here, with Firebrand. I want to become a proper dragon rider when I'm old enough. And maybe sometimes visit Britain to learn about my parents, but always come back here. You understand that many in Britain believe you belong there? That as, the boy who lived, you hold special significance to their society? I didn't ask to be special, Harry said with surprising firmness. I just want to be where I belong. And I belong with Firebrand. As if responding to his name, the copper dragon rumbled softly, the sound vibrating through the room. A faint shimmer of the synchronization aura briefly manifested around both boy and dragon. Akingbade nodded thoughtfully. I see the bond forming between you. It's rare and precious, something many wizards never experience in their lifetime. It would be wrong to break it, Harry stated, not as a plea but as a simple fact. That will be for the full ICW to decide, Akingbade reminded him gently. But your wishes have been noted, Mr. Potter. Thank you for your candor. After the meeting, as the observers prepared to depart via International Port Key, Akingbade pulled Dragomir aside for a final word. The evidence is compelling, he admitted quietly. Both of mistreatment at his previous placement and of genuine dragon bonding here. But the political pressure from Britain is substantial. Prepare for a challenging hearing. We're ready, Dragomir assured him. The dragons have chosen their course. We merely follow their wisdom. The night before the ICW hearing, Harry couldn't sleep. He sat on his balcony with Firebrand, both staring at the star-filled sky, anxiety radiating between them. What if they make me go back? Harry whispered, voicing his deepest fear. Firebrand rumbled reassuringly, sending mental images of them remaining together regardless of decisions made by humans. The young dragon's confidence was touching, if somewhat naive regarding the complexities of international magical law. A soft knock announced Dragomir's arrival. The commander joined them on the balcony, his weathered face gentle in the starlight. Nervous? He asked unnecessarily. Harry nodded. What if we lose? Dragomir settled beside them, considering his words carefully. In my experience, Harry, worrying about outcomes we can't control only steals joy from the present moment. What we can control is how we present our truth tomorrow. Will I have to talk to everyone? Harry asked, picturing an intimidating courtroom filled with stern-faced adults. Only if you wish to, Dragomir assured him. Your memories and the observers' reports will speak volumes. But if you choose to address the assembly directly, that option exists. Harry chewed his lip, thinking hard. I shouldn't I? To show them I mean it about staying. Your courage continues to impress me, Dragomir said with a small smile. But remember, regardless of tomorrow's outcome, your journey with Firebrand has only begun. Legal decisions can be revisited, appealed, amended. What can't be changed is the bond forming between you. Because it's magic? Harry asked. The oldest and deepest kind, Dragomir confirmed. The kind that existed before ministries and laws and international confederations. Dragon magic. This perspective seemed to calm Harry, who leaned against Firebrand with renewed confidence. We'll be okay then, whatever happens. I believe you will, Dragomir agreed. Now try to sleep. Tomorrow will require all your strength. The International Confederation of Wizards headquarters occupied a magically concealed valley in the Swiss Alps, neutral territory where magical delegations from around the world could gather without political interference. The main chamber, constructed of white marble with accents of gold and silver, featured tiered seating arranged in a perfect circle around a central speaking floor. Harry arrived with the Romanian delegation, wearing formal robes specially tailored for the occasion, emerald green with copper trim that complemented both his eyes and his connection to Firebrand. The young dragon had traveled separately with a handler team, housed in special accommodations designed for visiting magical creatures. Remember, Liliana whispered as they entered the imposing chamber, you are Harry Potter, dragon friend. Not just, the boy who lived. Stand tall. Harry nodded, squaring his small shoulders as they proceeded to their designated seating area. Across the chamber, he spotted the British delegation, a large group including Dumbledore, Minister Fudge, Amelia Bones, and several others he didn't recognize. Dumbledore caught his eye and nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. Supreme Mugwump Akingbade called the session to order, his magically amplified voice echoing through the chamber. We convene today to address case number 6729, the matter of Harry James Potter, British magical minor currently under Romanian protection via invocation of the ancient right of draconic protection. All evidence and testimony presented shall be bound by magical oath of truthfulness. The formal proceedings began with presentations from both delegations, Ambassador Antonescu eloquently presenting Romania's case for continued custody, followed by a British representative arguing for Harry's return to his homeland. Technical legal arguments dominated the morning session, focused on jurisdictional questions and the proper application of the ancient right. After a brief recess, the more personal aspects of the case took center stage. The observers who had visited the sanctuary presented their findings, and the pensive memories of Harry's life with the Dursleys were shown to the full assembly, causing visible discomfort among many delegates. The evidence of neglect and emotional abuse is substantial, Aikingbade noted after the memories concluded. Does the British delegation wish to address these conditions? Dumbledore rose, his face grave. We acknowledge that Harry's placement with his maternal relatives resulted in unacceptable living conditions. For this error in judgment, I personally accept responsibility. However, we contend that alternative magical guardianship within Britain would resolve these concerns while maintaining Harry's connection to his heritage and culture. And the binding spells discovered by Romanian healers, asked the Chinese delegate pointedly. Who accepts responsibility for those? A murmur ran through the assembly. This aspect had become particularly contentious, as the British delegation consistently denied any knowledge of such bindings. We continue to investigate their origin, Dumbledore replied carefully. They were not placed with ministry authorization or my knowledge. The afternoon proceeded with expert testimony regarding dragon bonding and its significance in magical law. Romanian dragon masters explained the rarity and importance of the synchronization developing between Harry and Firebrand, while British experts suggested such bonds could be maintained through regular visits rather than permanent residence. Finally, Aikingbade addressed Harry directly. Mr. Potter, you have heard the arguments regarding your future. The Assembly would welcome any statement you wish to make. Harry rose, looking impossibly small amidst the grand chamber. Liliana squeezed his hand encouragingly before he walked to the center of the floor, facing the supreme mugwump with remarkable composure for his age. Thank you, sir, he began, his young voice steady despite the hundreds of eyes upon him. I know everyone thinks they know what's best for me. The British ministry says I belong in Britain because I was born there and because my parents died fighting for it. And I do want to learn about my parents someday. He paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing. But Romania is where I found a real home. Not just a place to sleep, but people who care if I'm happy or sad, hungry or full, learning or confused. And Firebrand. His voice strengthened with conviction, Firebrand is my family now. We understand each other in ways I can't explain properly. It feels right, like we're supposed to be together. The chamber remained silent, many delegates visibly moved by the simple sincerity of the child's words. I know I'm just a kid, Harry concluded. But it's my life. And I want to live it where I'm happy. Where I belong. With the dragons. As he finished speaking, a commotion erupted at the chamber's entrance. Guards appeared to be arguing with someone demanding entry. Aikingbade frowned at the interruption. What is the meaning of this disturbance? He demanded. A flustered-looking official hurried to his side, whispering urgently. Aikingbade's eyebrows rose in surprise before he addressed the assembly. It appears the dragons wish to make their position known, he announced. The young Romanian longhorn bonded to Mr. Potter has broken containment and demands entry to these proceedings. Murmurs of astonishment rippled through the chamber. Such an occurrence was unprecedented in ICW history. The rules of this assembly do not address dragon participation, Aikingbade continued, a hint of amusement in his voice. However, given the nature of this case, I am inclined to allow it, provided safety can be assured. Dragomir stood immediately. I can guarantee the dragon's behavior, Supreme Mugwump. He seeks only proximity to Harry, nothing more. After brief consultation with security officials, Aikingbade nodded. Admitted, under Romanian rider supervision. The massive doors opened to reveal Firebrand, flanked by 2 adult handlers holding control wands they clearly hadn't needed to use. The young dragon entered with surprising dignity, ignoring the gasps and murmurs as he made his way directly to Harry in the center of the chamber. Harry's face lit with relief at seeing his friend. He placed his hand on Firebrand's neck in their customary greeting, and immediately, the synchronization aura manifested, more visible than ever before, copper and emerald energies intertwining with golden light that pulsed throughout the chamber. The display silenced even the most skeptical delegates. No one present could deny the genuine magical bond forming before their eyes, a connection that transcended human politics and jurisdictions. Most illuminating, Akingbade remarked into the awed silence. I believe this demonstration speaks more eloquently than any further legal arguments might. He conferred briefly with the other senior ICW officials before addressing the assembly again. In light of the evidence presented, including Mr. Potter's own statement and this remarkable demonstration of dragon bonding, the chair proposes the following resolution: Harry James Potter shall remain under Romanian magical guardianship, with primary residence at the Romanian Dragon Sanctuary, for the purpose of continuing his education and developing his natural bond with the dragon Firebrand. However, acknowledging his British heritage and the sacrifice of his parents, Mr. Potter shall maintain British citizenship and visit his homeland regularly for cultural education when deemed safe and appropriate. Upon reaching the age of 11, he shall be offered the opportunity to attend Hogwarts school for certain terms while maintaining his dragon bond through arranged visits. This arrangement shall be reviewed annually by an ICW committee to ensure Mr. Potter's continued welfare and educational progress. The proposal created immediate discussion throughout the chamber. The Romanian delegation appeared largely satisfied, while the British representatives showed mixed reactions, some relief that connections to Britain would be maintained, others clear disappointment at losing primary custody. After allowing brief debate, Akingbade called for a formal vote. The result, while not unanimous, showed substantial support for the compromise solution: 87 delegates in favor, 23 opposed, 11 abstaining. The resolution is adopted, Akingbade declared. Case 6729 is hereby resolved according to the terms stated. Harry looked to Dragomir and Liliana in confusion, not fully understanding the legal technicalities. It means you stay with us, Liliana explained, smiling broadly. With Firebrand. Romania is officially your home now. Harry's face broke into a delighted grin. He threw his arms around Firebrand's neck, the synchronization aura flaring brightly with their shared joy. Throughout the chamber, delegates watched with expressions ranging from approval to resignation, but none could deny the rightness of the image before them, a boy and his dragon, together as they were clearly meant to be. The days following the ICW ruling brought significant changes to Harry's life, though not in the fundamental ways he'd feared. His home remained the sanctuary, his closest companion Firebrand, but his status had transformed from emergency rescue to official Romanian ward with international diplomatic significance. You'll have additional security now, Dragomir explained as they walked the sanctuary grounds a week after returning from Switzerland. Not restrictions, but protection. Your position is unique. Harry nodded, understanding more than a typical 4-year-old might. Because Britain still wants me back someday. Partly, Dragomir acknowledged. And because the child who survived Voldemort's attack, now bonded with a Romanian dragon, represents something powerful to both friends and potential enemies. This was the first time anyone had spoken so directly about the political implications of Harry's situation. The sanctuary had previously focused on his immediate needs, healing, education, dragon bonding, rather than his symbolic importance. Will I really go to Hogwarts someday? Harry asked, changing the subject to something that had fascinated him since the ruling. If you wish to, Dragomir confirmed. The compromise allows for split educational terms once you reach 11, perhaps winters at Hogwarts, summers and springs here for continued dragon training. And Firebrand? Special arrangements would be made for regular visits and bonding maintenance. By then, he'll be large enough to make the journey easily. Harry considered this, clearly trying to imagine a future 7 years distant, an eternity to a 4-year-old. I'd like to see where my parents learned magic, he decided. But always come home to the dragons. A wise approach, Dragomir agreed. Balance between your heritages. They continued walking until they reached a high meadow where Firebrand waited with Elena, practicing flame control exercises. The young dragon had continued his accelerated growth, now nearly the size of a small horse despite being only 7 months old. Your synchronization training intensifies tomorrow, Dragomir told Harry as they watched Firebrand produce carefully controlled bursts of flame under Elena's direction. Now that your status is settled, we begin the formal Dragon Rider curriculum, adapted for your age, of course. Will I get to fly on Firebrand soon? Harry asked eagerly. Dragomir laughed. Not for several years. He needs to reach full flight strength and proper saddle size. But you'll begin training flights on adult dragons with experienced riders, learning the basics of aerial movement and communication. Harry's eyes lit with excitement at this prospect. Since his initial journey to Romania, he'd flown only briefly as a passenger during sanctuary ceremonies. The idea of proper flight training represented another step toward his dream of becoming a true dragon rider. As they approached, Firebrand noticed Harry and immediately abandoned his exercises, bounding across the meadow to greet his bonded human. Elena shook her head in amused resignation. His focus improves daily, she reported to Dragomir, until Harry appears. Then all training discipline vanishes. The hazard of synchronized pairs, Dragomir replied without concern. They'll learn balance with time. Harry and Firebrand had begun their own form of play, a synchronization game they developed where Harry projected mental images for Firebrand to match with flame patterns. It combined training with entertainment, strengthening their bond while refining the dragon's control. The British delegation arrives tomorrow, Elena reminded Dragomir quietly as they watched the pair. First official visit under the new arrangement. Dumbledore and Bones, Dragomir confirmed. With specialists to examine the binding spells healer Katrina discovered. Do you believe their claim of ignorance? Dragomir's expression turned thoughtful. Partly. I believe Dumbledore didn't place them himself, but he may have suspicions about who did. The pattern was too sophisticated for casual spellwork. And too deliberate to be benign, Elena added. Someone wanted Harry's magic suppressed. The question is why? Their conversation was interrupted as Harry called excitedly, Commander. Look what Firebrand can do now. The young dragon had produced a perfect flame replica of the Romanian sanctuary crest, a dragon in flight above stylized mountains. The control required for such detail exceeded what should have been possible for a dragon his age. Impressive, Dragomir acknowledged, sharing a meaningful look with Elena. Very impressive indeed. Albus Dumbledore arrived at the sanctuary the following day, accompanied by Amelia Bones and 2 specialists from St. Mungo's Department of Magical Core Research. The Romanian welcome was professionally courteous if not warm. Diplomatic relations remained strained despite the ICW compromise. Professor Dumbledore. Harry greeted him with more enthusiasm than the adults expected. A month away from the immediate custody battle had softened the boy's wariness around the British headmaster. Harry, my boy, Dumbledore replied warmly. You're looking remarkably well. Romania clearly agrees with you. I'm learning loads, Harry informed him proudly. Dragon history, and magical theory, and Romanian language, and synchronization exercises. Most impressive, Dumbledore said, genuine interest sparkling in his blue eyes. Perhaps you might show us some of what you've learned later. After the medical examination, Amelia Bones interjected, her practical nature asserting itself. Our specialists should evaluate the binding issue while Harry is fresh. The examination took place in healer Katrina's domain, a spacious medical facility featuring both traditional magical healing equipment and specialized tools designed for dragon-human medical issues. Harry sat calmly on an examination table while the St. Mungo's specialists performed complex diagnostic spells under Katrina's watchful eye. Extraordinary, murmured the lead specialist, a gray-haired wizard named Healer Prentice. The binding architecture is like nothing in our records. Multiple layers, some clearly years old, others more recent. Placed at different times? Amelia asked sharply. Definitively, Prentice confirmed. The oldest layer appears to date from infancy, crude but effective power dampening. Later additions created more sophisticated channeling restrictions. And none bear a recognizable magical signature? Dumbledore asked, watching the diagnostic displays with intense focus. None, Healer Katrina stated. Which itself is suspicious. Magical anonymization requires advanced skill. Or ancient magic not subject to modern signature detection, Dumbledore mused. The specialists continued their examination, taking magical recordings and samples for further study in Britain. Harry endured their attention patiently, clearly accustomed to medical evaluations after weeks of Katrina's healing protocols. The Romanian unblocking procedures appear well designed, Prentice acknowledged, reviewing Katrina's treatment records. Gradual dissolution rather than abrupt removal, minimizing magical shock risk. The dragon bond provides stabilization during the process, Katrina explained. We've accelerated the timeline slightly due to the synchronization benefits. After the examination concluded, the adults withdrew for private discussion while Harry returned to his regular lessons. In Dragomir's office, the atmosphere turned notably more tense. The bindings were deliberate magical suppression, Amelia stated bluntly. Potentially criminal depending on who placed them and why. I concur, Dumbledore said gravely. Though I suspect we're dealing with magic beyond ordinary ministry classification. Explain, Dragomir demanded. Dumbledore sighed, suddenly looking every year of his considerable age. When Lily Potter sacrificed herself to protect Harry, she invoked ancient protective magic, love-based shielding that ultimately rebounded Voldemort's killing curse. The blood protection I established with her sister was designed to maintain that shield. And you believe these bindings relate to that protection? Amelia asked skeptically. Not as I designed it, Dumbledore clarified. But protective magic can manifest in unexpected ways. The oldest binding layer may be an unconscious restriction created by Lily's sacrifice itself, limiting Harry's magic to protect him from detection or from his own power overwhelming his infant core. And the newer layers? Dragomir pressed. The directional channeling. The deliberate suppression. Here, Dumbledore hesitated. I have theories. Concerning connections that may have formed that night. Connections that someone might wish to minimize through magical suppression. Someone? Amelia repeated sharply. Or you, Albus. Not by my hand or direction, Dumbledore stated firmly. But I acknowledge my responsibility in not detecting these bindings during Harry's early years. A significant oversight I deeply regret. The conversation continued in this vein, technical and political implications debated from various angles. Throughout, Dragomir noted how carefully Dumbledore avoided certain specifics, never quite explaining his theories about connections formed the night Harry's parents died. Eventually, the discussion turned to Harry's future educational plans under the ICW Compromise. We've prepared a British magical heritage curriculum, Amelia explained. History, culture, and foundational knowledge appropriate for his age. Delivered initially through monthly visits from approved instructors, expanding as he grows older. Acceptable, Dragomir agreed. Coordinated with his Romanian education and dragon training. And visits to Britain? Dumbledore inquired. When he's older, Dragomir replied firmly. After comprehensive security protocols are established and agreed upon by both ministries. The boy should know his homeland, Dumbledore pressed gently. The boy should be safe, Dragomir countered. His primary residence was determined by the ICW ruling. Visits will occur when appropriate. Further negotiation established preliminary agreements for Harry's dual-nation education, Romanian primary with British supplements, leading eventually to split terms between the Sanctuary and Hogwarts once he reached 11. Later that afternoon, Harry proudly demonstrated his progress for the British visitors. Synchronization exercises with Firebrand, basic wandless magic, and even short conversations in Romanian impressed even Amelia Bones, who had arrived skeptical about the sanctuary's educational standards. "He's advancing beyond expected levels for his age," she acknowledged as they watched Harry guide Firebrand through a complex aerial target exercise. "The dragon bond accelerates certain magical developments," Dumbledore observed. "Fascinating symbiosis." As their visit concluded, Dumbledore requested a private moment with Harry, granted under Liliana's distant supervision. They walked slowly along a sanctuary path, an elderly wizard and small child engaged in surprisingly comfortable conversation. "I owe you another apology, Harry," Dumbledore said gently. "For not ensuring your proper care at your relative's home. It was a grave mistake on my part." Harry considered this with the directness children often bring to complex matters. "Why didn't you ever visit?" "To check if I was okay." "I believed distance was safest," Dumbledore admitted. "I feared drawing attention to your location. But I should have found ways to monitor your welfare more effectively." "The dragons found me," Harry pointed out. "From all the way in Romania." "Indeed they did," Dumbledore agreed, a hint of wonder in his voice. Dragon magic remains one of Wizardkin's most profound mysteries, even after centuries of study. They walked in silence for a moment before Harry asked, "Are you angry that I'm staying here?" "Not angry, no," Dumbledore replied thoughtfully. "Concerned about certain aspects of your future, perhaps. But I've lived long enough to recognize when magical forces greater than human planning have taken interest in a situation." "You mean the dragons choosing me?" "Precisely. Such choices are rare and significant." Dumbledore's blue eyes twinkled suddenly. "Besides, I suspect Hogwarts will still see you in due time. The castle has a way of calling to those who belong within its walls, even temporarily." "I'd like to see it someday," Harry admitted. "Where my parents learned magic." "And so you shall," Dumbledore promised. "When the time is right." As they returned to the main complex, Firebrand appeared from a nearby training area, trotting to Harry's side with his now customary protective posture. The young dragon eyed Dumbledore with obvious wariness, positioning himself slightly between the wizard and Harry. "Your friend remains vigilant," Dumbledore observed, making no move to approach closer. "He's just being careful," Harry explained, placing a reassuring hand on Firebrand's neck. "He doesn't know you well yet." "A commendable quality in a protector," Dumbledore acknowledged. "May I?" He gestured toward Firebrand, asking permission to approach. Harry nodded, murmuring something to Firebrand in what sounded like a mixture of Romanian and the specialized verbal commands dragon handlers used. The young dragon remained alert but allowed Dumbledore to step closer. With surprising grace for his age, Dumbledore bowed slightly to Firebrand, a gesture of respect between magical beings rather than the approach one would use with an ordinary animal. Firebrand studied him for a long moment before inclining his head a fraction in return. "Thank you," Dumbledore said, addressing the dragon directly. "For finding him when we failed to protect him properly. A wizard's debt is owed to you and your kind." Firebrand rumbled softly, a sound Harry seemed to interpret. "He says." "Well, it's hard to translate exactly," Harry explained. "Something like, magic recognizes its own, or, kindred souls find each other." "Profound wisdom," Dumbledore remarked. "From one so young." "Dragons mature differently than humans," Harry said, repeating something he'd clearly learned in his lessons. "Their understanding of magical connections develops before other aspects of their intelligence." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly at this sophisticated explanation from a 4-year-old. "Your education progresses remarkably well. I look forward to seeing your continued development during future visits." With final farewells exchanged, the British delegation departed, leaving Harry with mixed emotions, curiosity about his homeland balanced against relief that his life with Firebrand remained secure. "You did well," Liliana told him as they watched the visitors disappear via portkey. "Diplomatic but honest." "Dumbledore seems nicer now," Harry observed. Not so pushy about me going back to Britain. The ICW ruling settled the immediate question, Liliana explained. Now he focuses on long-term influence rather than direct control. Is that bad? Liliana considered carefully before answering. Not necessarily. Dumbledore is a complex wizard with many responsibilities and concerns beyond your situation. His initial error in placing you with your relatives was serious, but that doesn't make all his intentions harmful. Harry nodded, processing this nuanced view with surprising maturity. So we can work with Britain sometimes, but stay careful. Precisely, Liliana agreed, impressed by his understanding. Balance and vigilance. As spring blossomed across the Carpathian Mountains, Harry's life settled into a productive routine that balanced his various educational needs. Mornings typically focused on dragon-related training, synchronization exercises with Firebrand, theoretical studies of dragon physiology and psychology, and basic flight principles practiced on specially designed training apparatus. Afternoons brought more traditional magical education, theory, history, and carefully supervised practical exercises appropriate for his age and developing abilities. As the artificial bindings continued to dissolve under healer Katrina's guidance, Harry's natural magical talents emerged more fully, revealing capabilities that impressed even experienced instructors. His intuitive understanding of magical energy flow is remarkable, Bogdan reported during a monthly assessment meeting. Most children his age struggle with the abstract concept, but Harry visualizes it naturally, likely influenced by his dragon bond. The connection with Firebrand seems to provide a tangible reference point, Elena agreed. He understands magic as something living and responsive rather than simply a tool or force to be controlled. 3 times weekly, British instructors visited for heritage lessons, teaching Harry about his parents' world, its history, traditions, and his place within it. These sessions, initially awkward, gradually developed into engaging explorations of his roots, particularly when focused on his parents' lives and achievements. Your mother was exceptional at charms and potions, Professor Flitwick, the diminutive Hogwarts charms master, told him during one such lesson. Creative in her applications, meticulous in her execution. And your father? A natural transfiguration talent, though he often applied his gifts to, shall we say, unofficial projects. Harry treasured these stories, collecting mental images of parents he couldn't remember, brilliant, brave, and loved by those who had known them. Throughout it all, his bond with Firebrand deepened and evolved. The young dragon continued his accelerated growth, reaching the size of a small elephant by summer despite being barely a year old. His flame control developed precision that amazed even veteran handlers, and his intelligence manifested in increasingly complex communications with Harry. They're developing a private language, observed Nikolai, the sanctuary's dragon communication specialist. Part verbal, part mental imagery, part emotional resonance. Highly unusual at this stage of development. By midsummer, they had progressed to short training flights, Harry secured in a special harness aboard adult dragons while Firebrand flew alongside, building stamina and aerial coordination skills. These exercises revealed another unexpected talent. He has natural flight instinct, reported Mikhail, the flight instructor, after one such session. Anticipates air currents, compensates for drag patterns, intuitively understands three-dimensional movement in ways that usually take years to develop. His father was an exceptional flyer, Dragomir noted, having studied the reports from Harry's British heritage instructors. Perhaps there's a genetic component. Or perhaps the dragons chose him for reasons we're still discovering, Elena suggested. Indeed, Harry's connection with dragons extended beyond Firebrand. Other sanctuary dragons, even traditionally standoffish breeds, showed unusual interest in the young wizard, often altering their flight paths to pass near his training sessions or approaching when he visited different sanctuary regions. It's like they recognize something in him, one handler commented after witnessing a notoriously temperamental Hungarian horntail allow Harry to approach without the usual aggressive display. Fall brought Harry's first official visit to Britain, a carefully orchestrated day trip to Godric's Hollow to visit his parents' memorial and restored cottage, now preserved as a historical site. Security measures were extensive, with both Romanian dragon riders and British aurors coordinating protection. Harry stood solemnly before the statue depicting his parents holding an infant version of himself, Firebrand, who had refused to be left behind despite diplomatic complications, crouched protectively nearby. "They look happy," he said quietly to Liliana, who stood beside him. "Like a real family." "They were," she assured him. "Everything we've learned confirms they loved you very much." The cottage itself affected Harry deeply, restored to its pre-attack condition but preserved empty as a memorial. He walked slowly through rooms where his family had briefly lived, touching doorframes and windowsills as if they might retain memories of those who had inhabited the space. In what had been his nursery, he stopped, a strange expression crossing his face. "It happened here," he said, his voice oddly distant. "Where he tried to kill me." Liliana exchanged concerned glances with Dragomir, who had accompanied them as security lead. Neither had explicitly told Harry the details of the attack location. "Yes," Dragomir confirmed carefully. "This was your room." Harry nodded, absently touching his lightning scar. "I remember green light sometimes. In nightmares." Before the adults could respond, Firebrand rumbled from the doorway where he'd been carefully navigating the human-sized structure. The dragon's golden eyes fixed on Harry with unusual intensity, and something seemed to pass between them, a communication beyond words. Harry straightened, the distant expression replaced by calm resolution. "It's okay," he told the concerned adults. "Firebrand says what happened here is past. We're making something new now." The wisdom in this simple statement, whether originating from Harry or his draconic companion, struck both adults deeply. Indeed, the sanctuary's intervention had created a new path from the tragedy that had defined Harry's early life. The visit concluded without incident, though magical newspapers throughout Britain ran front-page stories the following day featuring images of Harry Potter with his Romanian dragon guardian at Godric's Hollow, a visual embodiment of the new reality that many British wizards still struggled to accept. Winter settled over the Carpathian Mountains, transforming the sanctuary into a crystalline landscape of snow-covered peaks and frozen lakes. Dragons, naturally resistant to cold, thrived in these conditions, their flames creating brilliant contrasts against the white backdrop. Harry celebrated his 5th birthday with a sanctuary-wide celebration that combined Romanian traditions with elements from his British heritage. Dragomir officially recognized his status as a dragon rider initiate, years ahead of the normal age but acknowledging the reality of his bond with Firebrand. "The path of a dragon rider is ancient and honorable," Dragomir announced during the ceremony, placing a copper pendant engraved with a dragon around Harry's neck. "You walk it younger than most, but with the dragon's blessing." The pendant, enchanted to grow warm when Firebrand needed to communicate over distance, became Harry's most treasured possession, rarely leaving his neck even during sleep. As spring approached again, bringing the 1-year anniversary of Harry's rescue, Ambassador Antonescu requested a meeting with Dragomir and the sanctuary leadership. British intelligence reports increased activity among suspected former Death Eaters, he announced without preamble. Nothing concrete enough for international alerts, but concerning patterns emerging. "Related to Harry?" Dragomir asked immediately. "Unclear," Antonescu admitted. "But timing suggests possible connection to the anniversary of his removal from Britain." "Security protocols?" Elena inquired. "Already enhancing them," Dragomir confirmed. "Additional wards, increased patrols, communication channel verification." "Should we inform Harry?" Liliana asked, her protective instincts evident. Dragomir considered this carefully. "Not specific threats, but general awareness seems prudent. He's shown remarkable maturity for his age." Indeed, the boy who now joined regular training sessions with much older dragon rider candidates demonstrated development beyond his years, not just magically but emotionally and intellectually. The dragon bond, combined with the sanctuary's educational approach, had accelerated his growth in multiple domains. Later that day, Dragomir found Harry and Firebrand in their favorite meadow, practicing a complex synchronization exercise involving magical energy redistribution. The copper dragon, now the size of a small house despite being only 15 months old, created controlled flame patterns that Harry redirected with wandless gestures, an advanced technique normally taught to teenage riders. "Impressive control," Dragomir commented, approaching as they completed the exercise. Harry beamed at the praise. "Firebrand's teaching me how dragon fire responds to different magical frequencies. It's brilliant." "I've no doubt," Dragomir agreed, settling on a boulder nearby. "Do you realize tomorrow marks 1 year since you came to us?" Harry nodded, suddenly thoughtful. "Best year of my life," he said simply. "I'm glad to hear that," Dragomir replied. "But with anniversaries sometimes come reflections from others as well. Not all positive." Harry's expression showed immediate understanding. "You mean people who don't like that I'm here instead of Britain? Like the Death Eaters who followed Voldemort?" Dragomir blinked, surprised by the direct connection. "What do you know of Death Eaters?" "My British history lessons covered them," Harry explained. "And I've been reading sanctuary records about the magical war. The dragons helped fight against Grindelwald, and later some Romanian riders helped Britain against Voldemort." Once again, Dragomir found himself adjusting his expectations of what Harry might know or understand. The boy absorbed information voraciously, particularly anything connecting to dragons or his personal history. "Yes, well," Dragomir continued, "we have indications of some increased activity among certain groups. Nothing specific, but enough to warrant enhanced security." Harry nodded seriously. "What should I do?" "Maintain awareness," Dragomir advised. "Stay within sanctuary boundaries. Report anything unusual immediately, no matter how insignificant it might seem." "And Firebrand?" The dragon rumbled at hearing his name, moving closer to Harry protectively. "Firebrand already understands danger," Dragomir assured him. "Your bond will provide additional warning if threats approach. Trust that connection." Harry placed his hand on Firebrand's scales, the synchronization aura briefly shimmering around them, now a permanent feature of their connection that manifested during moments of focused communication. "We'll be careful," Harry promised. "But we're not afraid." The quiet confidence in the statement, from a 5-year-old who had already faced more hardship than many adults, struck Dragomir deeply. Whatever future challenges awaited, Harry Potter was not facing them alone or unprepared. The anniversary of Harry's rescue passed without incident, despite heightened security throughout the sanctuary. Spring blossomed across the mountains, bringing new hatchlings to the nursery and advancing training schedules for all rider candidates. For Harry and Firebrand, the season marked a significant milestone. The copper dragon had reached sufficient size and strength for Harry to begin actual flight training on his back rather than accompanying adult dragons. Remember, Elena instructed as they prepared for their first solo flight, the bond does much of the work. Trust Firebrand to maintain stability. Focus on your connection rather than physical control. Harry nodded, excitement barely contained as he settled into the specially designed saddle. Though still small for his age, he had grown considerably during his year at the sanctuary, proper nutrition and constant activity developing a wiry strength evident in his confident movements. "Ready, Firebrand?" he asked, leaning forward to stroke the dragon's neck. The copper dragon rumbled affirmatively, muscles tensing in anticipation. Around them, a small group of handlers and instructors watched with a mixture of professional assessment and emotional investment. Many had become deeply attached to both dragon and boy over the past year. With a powerful thrust of his wings, Firebrand launched skyward, Harry moving instinctively with the motion. They climbed rapidly, the sanctuary falling away below as they entered the clear mountain air. "Woo-hoo!" Harry's joyful shout carried back to the watching group, bringing smiles to even the most stoic handlers. For nearly an hour, they practiced basic maneuvers, turns, glides, simple dives, and altitude adjustments. Throughout, instructors monitored from companion dragons, but intervention proved unnecessary. The synchronization between Harry and Firebrand translated perfectly to flight, their movements harmonized as if they'd been flying together for years. Natural talent, Mikhail commented to Dragomir as they watched from an observation platform. The youngest successful rider in Sanctuary records. Not coincidence, Dragomir replied. The dragons chose carefully when they sensed him across Europe. When Harry finally landed, his face glowed with exhilaration. That was amazing, he exclaimed, dismounting with practiced ease. Firebrand says we're meant to fly together. That it feels right. It certainly looks right, Elena agreed, conducting a quick check of both rider and dragon. Your synchronization maintained perfectly throughout the flight. This successful first flight initiated a new phase in Harry's training, regular aerial exercises that rapidly advanced from basic maneuvers to more complex patterns. Within weeks, he and Firebrand were performing sequences that typically took riders years to master. It's like they share a single nervous system, one instructor remarked after watching them execute a particularly challenging spiral dive. Perfect compensation, anticipatory adjustments, unified energy flow. The Romanian ministry took note of this exceptional development, recognizing potential beyond standard dragon rider protocols. Ambassador Antonescu arrived one summer morning with a formal document bearing the ministry's seal. The ministry officially recognizes Harry Potter as Romania's youngest dragon rider candidate in 3 centuries, he announced during a sanctuary gathering. With all rights, responsibilities, and protections thereof. The declaration carried significant legal weight beyond sanctuary boundaries, establishing Harry's status under international magical conventions and strengthening Romania's position regarding his continued residence. It also granted him specific protections under laws governing magical apprenticeships and recognized training programs. British representatives, while officially acknowledging the designation, responded with renewed proposals for Harry to begin part-time educational residency in Britain earlier than the original ICW agreement specified. His exceptional magical development suggests readiness for broader exposure to British magical education, their formal request stated. Split residence could begin as early as age 7 rather than 11. Dragomir and the Sanctuary leadership rejected this proposal firmly but diplomatically. Harry's accelerated development stems directly from his dragon bond, their response noted. Interrupting that process prematurely would risk both magical and psychological setbacks. The original timeline remains appropriate. Behind these diplomatic exchanges lay deeper concerns. Intelligence reports continued to indicate subtle movements among dark wizard factions in Britain, nothing overt enough for official action but sufficient to maintain enhanced security around Harry. Dumbledore, making his quarterly visit to assess Harry's progress, addressed these concerns directly with Dragomir. Your caution is warranted, the elderly wizard acknowledged as they watched Harry and Firebrand practicing aerial target exercises. Certain elements in Britain remain unsettled regarding Harry's status and location. Death Eater remnants? Dragomir asked bluntly. Some, Dumbledore confirmed. Though I suspect multiple factions with different motivations. Harry represents various things to various interests, symbol, weapon, political leverage. But not a child to be protected and nurtured, Dragomir observed dryly. To us, certainly, Dumbledore agreed. To others. He left the thought unfinished, his usual twinkling expression momentarily replaced by something harder and colder. You believe actual threats exist? Dragomir pressed. Beyond political maneuvering? I believe Harry Potter will never live an ordinary life, Dumbledore replied carefully. Voldemort's defeat created ripples that continue to spread. Some believe that defeat was temporary. This ominous statement hung between them as they continued observing Harry's practice session. The boy who had arrived traumatized and malnourished just over a year ago now flew with confidence and joy, his bond with Firebrand strengthening daily. Whatever future threats might emerge, both wizards silently acknowledged the sanctuary had given Harry something precious, security, belonging, and purpose. As Harry approached his 6th birthday, his life at the sanctuary had developed rhythms and relationships that made Romania truly home. His Romanian language fluency matched his English, his magical abilities continued advancing beyond standard age expectations, and his bond with Firebrand had become a sanctuary benchmark for synchronized pairs. Regular visits from British instructors maintained his connection to his heritage, supplemented by carefully scheduled trips to magical Britain several times yearly. These excursions, always under heavy security, introduced Harry to selected aspects of the wizarding world that would have been his daily experience had he remained in Britain. During one such visit to Diagon Alley, Harry encountered magical children his own age for the first time since leaving the Dursleys. The Weasley family, selected by Dumbledore as appropriate representatives of British wizarding culture, met Harry and his Romanian escorts at Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor. "Blimey, you really do have a scar," exclaimed Ron Weasley, a gangly red-haired boy exactly Harry's age, before his mother could stop him. "Ronald!" Molly Weasley scolded, looking mortified. "I'm so sorry," she added to Liliana, who accompanied Harry. "No manners whatsoever." Harry, far from offended, grinned at Ron's directness. "Yeah, it's from when Voldemort tried to kill me." The casual use of the feared name caused a collective gasp from the Weasleys, though young Fred and George, twin boys a few years older, looked impressed rather than scandalized. "You're not supposed to say the name," Ron informed Harry, wide-eyed. "Why not?" "It's just a name," Harry replied, genuinely puzzled. The Romanian sanctuary used Voldemort's name freely in historical and educational contexts. "Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself," quoted Percy, the oldest Weasley child present, in a pompous tone that suggested he was repeating something he'd heard rather than expressing his own opinion. "Exactly." Harry agreed enthusiastically, causing Percy to look surprised at having his pedantry embraced. The ice cream meeting evolved into a surprisingly enjoyable cultural exchange. The Weasley children bombarded Harry with questions about Romania and dragons, while Harry eagerly absorbed their perspectives on growing up in magical Britain. "You really fly on a dragon?" Ron asked for the third time, clearly struggling to process this information. "Like, an actual dragon. Not a broom." "Firebrand," Harry confirmed. "He's a Romanian longhorn, copper-colored with golden eyes. He's brilliant at aerial dives and flame pattern work." "Wicked," breathed Fred and George in unison. "Is he here?" asked little Ginny Weasley, the youngest, who had remained shyly silent until now. "He's too big for Diagon Alley," Harry explained. "He's waiting at the sanctuary's secure point with Commander Dragomir. I get to see him tonight when we portkey back." "Don't you miss having other kids around?" Ron asked through a mouthful of chocolate ice cream. "Just being with dragons all the time?" Harry considered this question seriously. "Not really. There are other rider candidates at the sanctuary, mostly older, but some my age now. And Firebrand understands me better than most people." This concept, a dragon as primary companion, clearly stretched the Weasley children's understanding of normal social development. But their natural curiosity and Harry's enthusiasm for sharing his unique life created genuine connection despite the cultural differences. "You should visit the sanctuary sometime," Harry suggested as the meeting concluded. "Your dad works at the ministry, right? They have exchange programs." "Oh, Arthur's department couldn't possibly." Molly began doubtfully. "Dragon research falls under international magical cooperation now," Liliana interjected smoothly. "Sanctuary visits can be arranged through proper channels, especially for educational purposes." The Weasley children immediately began lobbying their mother, the possibility of seeing actual dragons up close overwhelming any reservations about traveling to Romania. As they departed, Ron impulsively offered Harry a chocolate frog card from his collection, Dumbledore, appropriately enough. "So you remember us," he explained awkwardly. Harry, touched by the gesture, reciprocated with a small copper scale Firebrand had shed during his last growth phase, a treasured item he carried for good luck. "Blimey," Ron whispered, holding the scale reverently. "A real dragon scale." This exchange, simple as it was, represented something significant, Harry's first friendship with a child his own age that wasn't mediated through dragon bonds or sanctuary structures. Liliana noted this milestone with quiet satisfaction as they returned to their Romanian escorts. "Did you enjoy meeting other magical children?" she asked as they prepared for port-key departure. Harry nodded thoughtfully. "They're nice. Different from sanctuary kids. Ron doesn't know much about dragons, but he knows loads about Quidditch and chess. Perhaps he could visit sometime," Liliana suggested. "Cultural exchange works both ways." "I'd like that," Harry agreed. "And I want to try Quidditch sometime." "It sounds brilliant." This successful social interaction reinforced the sanctuary's developing approach to Harry's unique situation: integration rather than isolation, building bridges to British magical society while maintaining his Romanian dragon rider identity. Whatever future awaited, it would be enriched by connections to both worlds. Harry's 6th birthday celebration marked another milestone. Firebrand had reached sufficient growth for Harry to participate in his first sanctuary patrol flight. Though still the youngest rider by several years, his exceptional bond and proven aerial skills had earned this privilege. "Stay with the formation," Dragomir instructed during the pre-flight briefing. "Standard observation pattern only. Any anomalies are reported, not investigated." "Clear." "Yes, Commander," Harry confirmed seriously, dressed in junior patrol leathers that matched the adult riders' uniforms. 8 dragons and riders launched at dawn, forming a perfect aerial line as they climbed above the sanctuary. Harry and Firebrand took the rightmost position, traditionally assigned to the newest patrol member but also strategically placing them between 2 experienced pairs. The patrol route followed the sanctuary's outer boundaries, monitoring both physical and magical security perimeters. For Harry, the experience combined practical training with a deeper understanding of the sanctuary's defensive systems, knowledge that complemented his theoretical security lessons. Halfway through their circuit, Firebrand suddenly tensed beneath him, head turning sharply toward the eastern boundary. Harry felt the dragon's awareness spike through their bond. Something had caught his attention. "Firebrand senses something," Harry reported through the communication charm each rider carried. "Eastern quadrant, near the outer ward line." Dragomir, leading the formation, signaled acknowledgement. "Maintain position. Describe what he's detecting." Harry closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the impressions flowing through his bond with Firebrand. "Magical signature, unfamiliar, trying to mask itself. Firebrand says it feels wrong. Artificial somehow." This specific detail, beyond what most riders could interpret from their dragons, caused an immediate shift in formation. Dragomir signaled a defensive pattern, with senior riders moving to protective positions around Harry while others prepared for possible threat response. "Probe team only," Dragomir ordered through the communication charm. "Beta pair investigate, Delta pair backup. Remainder maintain defensive formation." 2 dragons peeled away, heading toward the indicated boundary area while the others tightened their pattern. Harry, though youngest, maintained perfect position, Firebrand responding to the situation with disciplined precision despite his relative inexperience. Minutes later, the investigation team reported back. "Detection ward tampering confirmed," came Elena's voice through the charm. "Sophisticated work, almost undetectable by standard monitoring. Evidence of recent intrusion attempt." "Nature?" Dragomir demanded. "Targeted magical signature screening," Elena replied. "Designed to create a specific blind spot in our perimeter detection. Signature analysis suggests British origin." This last detail sent a ripple of tension through the formation. British magical signatures attempting to breach sanctuary security carried obvious implications regarding Harry. "Complete patrol," Dragomir ordered calmly. "Security team alerted and responding to breach point. Maintain vigilance." Harry remained silent during this exchange, but Firebrand's agitation transmitted clearly through their bond. The young dragon, though disciplined, clearly understood the potential threat, and its likely target. Upon returning to the sanctuary, Harry was immediately escorted to secure quarters while the adult riders joined security personnel for assessment and response planning. Liliana stayed with him, her casual manner belied by the alertness in her posture. Was someone trying to get to me? Harry asked directly once they were alone. Liliana considered deflecting but recognized the futility of withholding information from someone bonded to a dragon. It appears someone was attempting to create an entry point, yes. Whether to extract you or simply monitor is unclear. Harry nodded, absorbing this with remarkable calm for a 6-year-old. British, they said. Death Eaters? Possibly, Liliana acknowledged. Or other factions with interest in your whereabouts and abilities. Like the Ministry? Harry suggested perceptively. British-Romanian relations have been strained since your rescue, Liliana admitted. Though official Ministry involvement in ward tampering would constitute a serious breach of international magical law. Harry sat cross-legged on his bed, absently stroking a small dragon carving, a birthday gift from the Sanctuary craftmasters. Firebrand wants to stay closer, he said after a moment. He's worried. Understandable. We'll adjust patrol schedules to ensure you're both within Sanctuary central zones for now. Harry nodded, then asked the question Liliana had been expecting since they returned: will they stop my visits to Britain? Security protocols will be reviewed, she replied carefully. Adjustments made where necessary. But cultural exchange remains important for your development. This measured response seemed to satisfy Harry, though Liliana knew the security discussions occurring elsewhere in the sanctuary were far more intense than she'd indicated. The ward tampering represented the first concrete security breach attempt since Harry's arrival, a significant escalation from the vague intelligence reports of recent months. Later that evening, Dragomir joined them, his weathered face revealing both concern and resolution as he sat across from Harry. You did well today, he began. Firebrand's detection and your interpretation gave us critical minutes of advantage. Harry straightened at the praise. Did you find out who did it? Not specifically, Dragomir admitted. But the magical signature has been catalogued. Future attempts using similar techniques will trigger immediate alerts. Was it Death Eaters? Harry asked directly. Dragomir exchanged glances with Liliana before answering carefully. The sophistication suggests professional work, more likely unsanctioned intelligence operatives than extremist remnants. Possibly former Aurors or unspeakables working for private interests. Someone rich and powerful, Harry translated, his political awareness surprising even those accustomed to his accelerated development. Potentially, Dragomir acknowledged. Which means we adapt accordingly. Your training schedule will incorporate additional security awareness. Firebrand's protective instincts were excellent today, we'll build on that foundation. Am I still allowed to fly? Harry asked, revealing the concern foremost in his mind. Dragomir smiled slightly. Yes, though with adjusted parameters for now. No solo flights beyond inner sanctuary boundaries. Patrol participation continues but with enhanced escort protocols. The relief on Harry's face confirmed what everyone who knew him understood: separating him from flight and Firebrand would damage more than it protected. Whatever security enhancements followed would need to balance protection with the freedom essential to his development as a dragon rider. One more thing, Dragomir added, his expression turning more serious. Professor Dumbledore has been informed of today's incident. He's requested an emergency visit to discuss security implications. Does he know who did it? Harry asked immediately. He has suspicions, Dragomir replied carefully. Which he prefers to discuss in person. This news created a thoughtful silence. Harry's relationship with Dumbledore had evolved over the past year, from initial wariness to cautious respect, particularly as the elderly wizard had proven consistently supportive of Harry's sanctuary placement despite initial opposition. When is he coming? Harry finally asked. Tomorrow, Dragomir confirmed. Along with someone from British magical law enforcement specializing in ward security. Harry nodded, absently touching the copper pendant that connected him to Firebrand. Through their bond, he could sense the dragon's protective vigilance even from the adjacent roost where he rested. We'll be ready, he said simply, a statement that encompassed more maturity and determination than any 6-year-old should need to express. Dumbledore arrived the following day, accompanied by Bill Weasley, a surprise choice that Dragomir questioned immediately upon their arrival. Mr. Weasley is not Aura Division, he noted as they settled in the sanctuary's secure conference room. His credentials show Gringotts' employment. Precisely why I selected him, Dumbledore explained. This situation requires curse-breaking expertise from someone without direct ministry ties. Bill's work with Gringotts has given him experience with the exact type of ward manipulation detected yesterday. Bill, a young man with long red hair tied back in a ponytail and a single fawn earring that suggested unconventional perspectives, nodded confirmation. Egyptian tomb security uses similar masking techniques. Whoever attempted your boundary penetration knows ancient warding methods not commonly taught in standard Aura training. This assessment aligned with the sanctuary's own findings, leading to a productive technical discussion of security enhancements. After thorough review of the incident details, the group reached consensus on several immediate measures: enhanced boundary layering, signature-specific alerts, and modified patrol patterns. Throughout these discussions, Harry remained present but quiet, absorbing information with remarkable focus for his age. Only when the technical aspects concluded did Dumbledore address him directly. "You handled yesterday's situation admirably, Harry," the elderly wizard commented. "Your bond with Firebrand provided crucial early warning." "He sensed it before any of our wards triggered," Harry explained, pride evident in his voice. "He says magical tampering creates disturbances in natural energy patterns that dragons feel before detection spells activate." "Fascinating," Bill remarked. "Dragon sensitivity to magical disruption is documented but rarely applied to security systems. There might be applications for Gringotts in that principle." "The sanctuary has integrated dragon sensitivity into our security for centuries," Dragomir noted. "Though Harry's interpretation abilities exceed our usual expectations for bonded pairs." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. "Harry has a habit of exceeding expectations." The conversation then turned to the more sensitive question of who might be behind the intrusion attempt. Here, Dumbledore became noticeably more guarded. "Certain factions in Britain remain unsettled by Harry's residence here," he began carefully. "Some with legitimate concerns about cultural heritage, others with more questionable motivations." "You have specific suspects," Dragomir stated rather than asked. Dumbledore nodded slowly. "The magical signature analysis you shared contains elements consistent with certain, specialized training methods, historically employed by a particular department at the Ministry." "Unspeakables?" Liliana suggested. "Former members, more likely," Dumbledore clarified. "Operating independently but utilizing techniques developed within the Department of Mysteries." "Under whose direction?" Dragomir pressed. "That remains unclear," Dumbledore admitted. "Though financial resources would be required for an operation of this sophistication." "Old families," Bill suggested. "Those with both ministry connections and private wealth." The implication hung in the air, pure-blood interests potentially seeking access to Harry for purposes unknown. Could it be Voldemort supporters? Harry asked directly, causing Bill to wince slightly at the casual use of the name. Dumbledore considered Harry thoughtfully before answering. "Possible, though the approach lacks the aggressive signature typically associated with Death Eater operations. This attempt showed subtlety and patience, characteristics more aligned with long-term intelligence gathering than immediate extraction or harm. Which could be more dangerous ultimately," Dragomir noted grimly. "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed. "Which is why I recommend additional measures beyond physical security." He turned to Harry again. "I believe it's time we addressed your occlumency training more formally." This suggestion created immediate tension in the room. Mind arts training for a 6-year-old, even one as developmentally advanced as Harry, represented a significant decision with both protective benefits and potential concerns. "Isn't he rather young?" Liliana asked carefully. "Traditionally, yes," Dumbledore acknowledged. "However, Harry's dragon bond provides a natural foundation for mental discipline that most children lack at his age. And if certain parties are indeed taking interest in his magical development, mental protection becomes increasingly important. Harry, following the discussion with clear understanding, asked the practical question, what's occlumency exactly? The magical art of protecting your mind from external intrusion or influence, Dumbledore explained. A valuable skill for anyone, but particularly for someone in your unique position. Would it affect my bond with Firebrand? Harry asked immediately, identifying the critical concern from his perspective. Not negatively, Dumbledore assured him. In fact, properly structured, occlumency training could enhance your synchronization by providing greater mental clarity and control. After extended discussion, including consultation with healer Katrina regarding developmental considerations, a compromise approach emerged: introductory mental exercises appropriate for Harry's age, focusing on visualization techniques that complemented rather than restricted his dragon bond. I'll develop a training protocol that integrates with his existing synchronization work, Liliana offered. Something that builds on the mental discipline he's already developing rather than imposing entirely new structures. Excellent, Dumbledore agreed. I can provide reference materials adapted from traditional methods, and perhaps visit quarterly to assess progress directly. As the meeting concluded, Bill requested permission to examine the boundary breach location personally, an inspection that might reveal additional details about the intruder's methods and intentions. Dragomir assigned Elena to accompany him, her dragon patrol experience complementing his curse-breaking expertise. Dumbledore remained behind briefly, addressing Harry with unusual directness once the others had departed. There's something more you should understand, Harry, he said, his typical twinkling manner replaced by serious intensity. The interest in you extends beyond your current abilities or famous history. Some believe your future holds significance beyond what most can imagine. Because of defeating Voldemort as a baby? Harry asked. Partly, Dumbledore acknowledged. But also because of possibilities that event created. Connections and potentials not fully understood even now. Harry considered this cryptic statement with surprising maturity. Is that why someone put binding spells on my magic when I was little? To control those possibilities? Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly at this perceptive question. You continue to impress me with your insight. Yes, I believe the bindings were placed by someone who feared certain aspects of your magical development, though whether from protective impulse or more selfish motivation remains unclear. And they might still be trying to control me now, Harry concluded. Through these boundary breaches and whatever comes next. A succinct summary, Dumbledore agreed. Which is why your continued development here, under Romanian protection with your dragon bond flourishing, represents both opportunity and challenge. You grow beyond anyone's ability to fully predict or control, including mine. This last admission, Dumbledore acknowledging limits to his own influence, carried weight that even Harry's young mind could recognize. Whatever complicated game was being played across international boundaries, Harry himself was emerging as an active participant rather than merely a prize to be claimed. I'll learn the occlumency, Harry decided firmly. And whatever else helps keep me and Firebrand safe. Dumbledore nodded approvingly. A wise decision. Balance protection with continued growth, defensible but not defined by defense. After Dumbledore's departure, Harry sought Firebrand immediately, finding comfort in the physical presence of his bonded dragon. As he leaned against the warm copper scales, he processed the day's revelations with the mental clarity their connection always seemed to provide. People will keep coming for us, he told Firebrand quietly. For reasons they don't even fully understand themselves. The dragon rumbled agreement, sending impressions of protective vigilance mixed with confident defiance. Through their bond, Harry sensed Firebrand's unshakable certainty: whatever challenges approached, they would face them together, neither fully Romanian nor British but something new and unique. Dragon and Rider, forging a path beyond traditional boundaries. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.